Today, for this morning, we have an advanced training opportunity for us. The Native Plant Society of Texas, we like to call it NPSOT. So when you hear NPSOT, it's the Native Plant Society of Texas. Our local chapter, the Pines and Prairies chapter, is hosting level 1 of their native landscape certification program. You have to take level 1 before you can take any of the other levels. You can take any of the other levels out of order. Level 1 will teach you 45 native plants and 5 invasive plants and get you started on your way to know about native plants. Class takes place on May 6th. We do not have class that day. Class usually runs from 9 to about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Includes a plant walk at Mercer. This takes place at Mercer. You can go online to the Native Plant Society of Texas website and find the May 6th class. Now the class is limited in size. I think they have it off at 35 maybe, and they're going to have 20-something people signed up. Okay. So, and all of it counts for advanced training, so you can get like a whole big old swath of advanced training in one way. All right. And I think that's, oh, you know what I keep forgetting? Our class rep. I keep forgetting that we're supposed to vote on the class rep. So what I want you to do, and I hope you're listening to me online, what I want you to do is if you're interested in running for class rep, please let me know and we'll vote next time we meet. The class representative shows up at the board meetings. They're all via Zoom, so you don't have to go anywhere. And is a representative of the class, tells us, you know, kind of what's going on, and if we have questions about, you know, are we doing enough, all that kind of stuff. And then writes up a little article for the newsletter each month that says, I went to the board meeting and people were fun and we had a good time. Right? And then we went, we've already. But anyway, so it's not a very time consuming, but it counts as volunteer hours. So if you're interested in getting volunteer hours with just a little bit of work, that would be a great opportunity. Okay. Adrienne.
Yes. Hello, welcome. My name is Adrienne Paquette. I see you have another Adrienne here. Hello, Adrienne. How's it going? We find each other very quickly. I'm going to, hopefully this says, all right. So I am going to talk to you guys about mammal identification today. This will include skulls, tracks, and scat. So I'm going to share my screen with our Zoom friends here.
Did everybody get the scat on the way in? Whose scat is that? Adrienne told us when she came in.
Good deal. All right. I'm going to stay over here though. So I was the master naturalist class of 2016. Is that your class too, or are you 2015?
2014.
2014.
I had to write it down.
Oh, write it down in the thread.
I had to write it down.
And I volunteer a lot at Friends of Texas Wildlife, where we rehab wild animals. We get lots of birds, we get raccoons and skunks and armadillos and opossums. Yes, so that's a lot of fun. So if you guys are interested in volunteering there, I would highly recommend it. They'll do a short training and to teach you how to work at the center and what kinds of things need to be done there. If you are available to rehab animals at your house, you can also go through those trainings too. So if you're interested. Let me know. I can give you guys more information on that. I also have taken people on hikes. So I'm a hike leader and I'm a certified interpretive guide. That's what the real thing is. I promise it's a real thing. I have a pin and everything. And my job is I'm an educator for Texas Wildlife Association, which is a nonprofit organization. And most of my job is teaching people about our native wildlife and habitats. My background is my undergrad was from A&M. I went through the animal science program there as a pre-vet. Apparently vet school's really hard to get into and you have to be good at chemistry or whatever, but so I did my master's in ecology from St. Edward's in Austin. So
And you're our secretary.
and I'm the secretary. I'm also the program director for the outreach program and the direct outreach. And so going to booths or going to events and setting up a booth. So we're gonna do that later. We're gonna take a break after talk about this stuff, and then we'll talk more about that later. Sound good? What else do I do? Is there anything else? Oh, I do junior master naturalist. Yes. So I lead the junior master naturalist class. Your question? Yeah. It's 9 to 13. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Yeah. I mean, people volunteer all the time, but yeah, what do you like to do?
I teach 4th grade.
You teach 4th grade science. What is your passion? So we go through. Ologies, yeah. So if you're interested in being a part of the Junior Master Naturalist group, we go through a similar course type of training, but with kids, obviously. So it's more kid friendly. And I'll tell you guys that. So anyway, so if you guys find any sort of passion in any of the classes that you guys go through as an intern, and that would be something that you would like to teach for our Junior Master Naturalist class, then absolutely, we would love to have you guys. All right, good deal. So before we get started, I always forget it's gonna be really hot in here. So before I start like sweating, I'm gonna take my sweatshirt off. Sorry, this is kind of weird. I'm gonna strip before we start.
They're doing group projects this year,
Yes,
and they're designing booths.
yes. So we will get to that later, and I'm really excited for you guys to do that. All right, good deal. So you guys have, is it going here? No. Here we go. So we've talked about Aldo Leopold. Yes, you guys have read the Sam County Almanac, maybe? Or you have it, you own it, yes, okay. And Aldo Leopold lists 5 tools of conservation: axe, plow, cow, fire, gun. And those things can all be used in a negative way, but used correctly, they can be a positive influence in habitat creation and conservation. But I'd like to add one that I think is missing, and that is education, because that's kind of the first step, right? In order to use these tools properly, we have to be educated about why those are necessary and how to use this properly. We also have to be educated. Education is kind of the first step in taking care of something. You have to care about it first, right? So taking care of the birds, you got to know a little bit about the birds, right? So you can know how to take care of it. So that's my goal with my job, but also in life. Those are the kinds of things I think of when I'm taking people on hikes or meeting people at booths. Today, we're going to be talking about some adaptations of animals. So I want to kind of define the word a little bit so you guys know what we're talking about. An adaptation is something an organism has or does that helps it survive in its habitat. Maybe it's habitat specific. A lot of times it's going to be either physical or behavioral. So what you see in a physical picture of an animal, like my black bear here, those are characteristics that you can see on its body, right? Physical traits. Whereas behavioral things, you'd actually have to see that animal do things. Just based on this picture, I don't know what it sounds like. I don't know if it walks on, like hops around on one leg. I don't know if it can climb trees just based on a picture necessarily. So those kinds of behaviors would be things you'd have to actually watch them do. We are going to see how those things can also link, right? So how those physical adaptations can help them to do certain behaviors. I will also be talking about taxonomy. I want to remind you guys of our taxonomic hierarchy here really quickly. We are, so do you guys remember learning our deer, king, tail, king, for good spaghetti?
No domain. Started out with just kingdom, file, class, order, family.
Yeah, so we have domain, right, which is our eukaryotic cell organisms. And then, so we'll be in class Mammalia today. Here's my little example of our Brown bear or grizzly bear is in order carnivora or carnivora. Their family Ursidae, which means bear. The genus Ursus, which also means bear. And then species, we'll get more specific. Their species name is Ursus arctos, which means bear. A lot of our scientific, bear. Our scientific, and the grizzly bear is specifically Ursus arctos horribilis or horribilis, which means horrible bear, which is kind of rude, but okay. A lot of our scientific names are either going to be Latin or Greek. Ursus is Latin. You may recognize Ursus from Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, which are constellations of the Big Dipper, Little Dipper, right? Which is just big bear, little bear. Arctos is Greek for bear, and you may recognize Arctos from the Arctic. The Arctic has bears, and you can see the bear constellations from the Arctic. You cannot see, there are no bears, and you can't see the Arctic or the Ursus constellations in the Antarctic, which means literally no bears. So fun fact for the day. Full of them. All right. We're gonna start with this guy. So we see some adaptations on these animals here. What animals are these, first of all?
One of them's a longhorn.
One of them's a longhorn, and one of them is a deer. Do you guys know what kind of deer it could be? It is a white-tailed deer. We have white-tailed deer, we have mule deer here in Texas. You can tell the difference. You're not gonna see mule deer in this area, but if you're in an area where their territories overlap, you would be able to tell the difference in, what are those called on their heads? Antlers, right? What are these called?
Horns.
Horns. Very good. Those are two different things. We'll talk about that next. So on the white-tailed deer, they're gonna have one main branch to their antlers, whereas mule deer have two main kind of forks, and then their smaller tines come off of that. So horns, first of all, they are, I actually have one, I'm gonna pass one around for you guys. They're made out of keratin, like our fingernails. And that's kind of just a sheath. What I'm gonna pass around to you guys doesn't have the bone on the inside. But there would be a bone on the inside there, and that's how that grows. Horns are permanent. They grow forever, constantly on that animal, whereas antlers fall off. Another interesting thing about our horns is that females and males can both grow horns in most species of animals that grow horns. With antlers, most of the time, only the males have those antlers. Do you guys know there's one species of deer where the females also grow antlers? Do you know what that is? It's reindeer. One cool thing about that, hold on, more fun facts. Get ready to write this down. So with reindeer, the males lose their antlers in like November, maybe early December. The females don't lose their antlers until early spring in the next year. So if you see any depictions of Santa and his reindeer, and they have antlers, they're female. Yay, all right. Girl power. So with antlers, they are solid bone, and they grow just like the bones in the rest of our bodies do, but they are faster growing. It's the fastest growing tissue in the world of any mammal. They can grow like an inch a day, which is pretty incredible. They do fall off every year. They'll regrow the next year, and it can be an overall indication of health, right? So the healthier that animal is, the healthier those bones will be on his head that year. So when he goes to fight with the other males, the strongest one is more likely to win that fight. That's also going to be the healthier one. They can change from year to year. What we do realize also is kind of a lateral reflection of injury. So like if the buck has an injury on his back right leg, his left antler will show signs of like poor health, and vice versa. So that can be a good kind of way to tell. But it's likely they can fall off and then regrow the next year just fine. You cannot tell how old the animal is based on the number of tines it has. That is a myth that I've heard before. You can tell kind of how old it is based on the thickness of the base of the antlers and kind of how far apart they are, but that's just kind of general. It can be a guess depending on how bred that animal is for that purpose. So just a word of caution on aging deer by their antlers. And then, like you guys saw, the horn, and those of you guys who are online, those of you guys who don't see it in person there, the horn is kind of a hollow bone. All right. Good deal. Questions so far? All right. Moving on to things that we're going to see on a lot of other mammals here. Now, I will kind of word of caution here that the characteristics that we're looking at on these mammals may not apply to other animals. So it may not apply to birds, fish, reptiles, things like that. So keep that in mind, right? We're going to start with eyes. These eyes are going to be like here, this is a deer. They're very large. Okay, so I have on my deer here, you can see the size of these eyes can be, well, first of all, it's very subjective, right? But deer have really big eyes, which is why we say something is doe-eyed if they have really big eyes, right? So the larger their eyes in general, the better they'll be able to see in the dark. So what do we call an animal that's active at night? It's not a trick question now. Nocturnal. What do you call an animal that's active during the day? Diurnal, good K. Animals with those larger eyes are more likely to be nocturnal. I want to be clear here, I'm not saying that all nocturnal animals have big eyes. Have y'all talked about bats yet? Bats don't have big eyes, right? For the most part, they're going to have big ears. So adaptations can vary, but the larger eyes can indicate a nocturnal animal. Just basically, the larger their eye is, more light can get in there. Not to confuse you, deer are neither nocturnal nor diurnal. We would consider them crepuscular. Does anybody want to guess what crepuscular means? It's not both. Dawn and dusk. Crepuscular is a Latin word that means twilight. I found that out when I went to a book fair at school, and the Twilight books that were in Spanish. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, cool, what? That's what that means. So in an animal that's crepuscular, you might also see those larger eyes. So indicating the kind of the time of day. We'll also look at, you guys can see that, yeah. Okay, good. Sorry, I forgot to check in on our Zoom friends. We'll also look at how the eyes are placed on the head. So on the deer, for example, we see eyes that are not pointing straight forward. They're more pointing to the side. We can see this with the little monocle here, right? And this type of eye pointing out to the side is called monocular vision. That's very handy for me. Mono means one. So basically what we're saying is they're processing the images separately, like one at a time, from both sides of their face. We see this on prey animals like deer. Horses, if you ever walked up to a horse, somebody tells you like, walk up to the side of the horse so we can see you. It's right in front and have kind of a hard time seeing with both of those eyes. Versus a predator, like a coyote, that monocle little thing is pointing more straight forward. Now on a predator, it's called binocular vision, which is why we can use binoculars. So we can use both of our eyes at the same time, and it gives us depth perception, which is helpful for predators because they're actually trying to catch things. Right? You need to be able to see how far away something is to catch it more easily. We use a rhyme to remember this. I use a rhyme. I teach kids to remember. Eyes to the side need to hide. Eyes to the front need to hunt. I did not make that up. I know it's really cool, but don't give me credit for it. So with a lot of these animals, their eye socket may not be exactly clear. So on something like this is our coyote here. See this whole big hole here? It's not, the eye is not the entire thing. Do you guys see the line, the kind of the upside down Y here on the skull? You guys can see that here, there you go. This is called the sagittal crest. And on some animals, it's going to be more prominent than others, but basically where it Ys, and at the end of that, those little points there, everything behind it, if you kind of cover that up, you'll see what's left over is just the eye socket. There will be muscles and things in this open space. All right. Good deal. Let me make sure. I don't know if we have. Let's try here. No, we're pretty quiet. Online. Let's see that. Okay, that's good. Okay. Those of you guys on Zoom, if you guys have any questions, I have the chat open now so I can actually see your questions and comments. So y'all can type that in there whenever you feel like it. And I'll come back to that when I can. All right, good deal. So talking about our kind of canine family, the family Canidae, we have our coyote here. This is a good example of an animal. We're going to move on to kind of sense of smell here. It's a good example of an animal with a good sense of smell. We can see that based on the length of the nose, right? The longer their nose in general, the better their sense of smell will be. This is like police dogs are not going to be pugs, right? So sometimes we've bred animals to be a little bit different, but in general, the longer their nose, the better their sense of smell. So I measure the nose length versus the skull to kind of get a good idea there. Now this one is pretty obvious, very long nose, but in general, if the nose is about half the length of the skull, it's, I would say, long versus this guy. This guy's nose, so from the end of the eye to the end of the mouth, this nose is about 1, 2, and 3, about a third of the length of the skull, kind of on the medium side, probably a pretty decent sense of smell, but just doesn't maybe prioritize it like dogs do. And then something like this guy, this animal's nose is, we got 1, 2, 3, and 4, about a quarter of the length of the skull. This is on the shorter side. This is more like our nose. This animal has big eyes though, so maybe that's more important for this animal, right? So we're kind of looking at all these different characteristics put together. Here we go, got like the nose here. So kind of what I'm talking about from the end of the eye to the end of that mouth. That's how we're measuring that. So for a bobcat, like this guy, we see that shorter nose. The coyote and the bobcat are very similar in size, so they're easy to kind of compare next to each other. But you can still have a small animal with a large nose. So don't let that kind of be your, don't compare everything's nose to a coyote's nose. All right, sticking with dogs here. In general, the shape of the canine family skulls are going to be very similar. They will all have that long nose. Depending on the kind of dog, some of them are more active at night, some of them are more diurnal. Coyotes, for example, are diurnal. And so in natural kind of more rural areas. In urban areas, they've adapted to be more nocturnal just to avoid people, but their eye size has not really changed because we have lights in urban areas. So they don't need to see as well in the dark with larger eyes. So their eyes are pretty like average size, I guess you would say, for the size of this skull. That gives you kind of a good idea. And again, those animals that we would use for scent work are going to have a longer nose. And then we've done this with animals, and that's why those animals have a hard time breathing. So, little aliens. These are going to be our cats, our feline family. Now, cats can be categorized into 3 kind of main groups. We have large cats, small cats, and cheetahs are in their own little group. Let's see. Now, the thing about domestic cats is we did not domesticate cats. They kind of domesticated themselves. They're in charge here. Our cat little kitty overlords. And it's been a lot more recent than dogs that they have been domesticated. So they've retained a lot of their wild features, so to speak. Can anybody find which one is the domestic cat of this group? Hold up a number here. We got 5, 2, 1, 2, 5, 5, 1. You guys over here a little quiet. Not sure. Listen to me. This is what I tell my kids. It's okay to be wrong. There are no consequences. We find out the right answer, and that's how we learn. All right. Number 1 is a bobcat. Number 2, that's the one I just showed you guys a video. Number 2 is a mountain lion. Number 3, nobody gets number 3, but that's a Bengal tiger. Number 4 is an African lion. And number 5 is the domestic cat. So we see the same features in a lot of these cats, right? We see the bigger eyes, in general, the shorter nose. So those are going to be our felines. We're also going to look at teeth here in a little bit, and that will be another great clue, especially if something in the order carnivore. Somebody is having a hard time hearing. Okay. Oh, no, you're just checking to make sure everyone can hear,
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I'll say yes.
okay? Okay, good. I'm an Aggie, I can talk louder if I need to, so just let me know. All right, with cats, looking at their scat, cats are complete carnivores, meaning about 90% or more of their diet has to be meat. Their scat will be fairly uniform. The one on the left is a mountain lion, the one on the right is a bobcat. It will be in general the same kind of uniform color. With the shape of it, it's going to have kind of lumps. Does anybody have a cat at home? I know you do. It's gonna look like that, but just bigger. Those lumps, it may taper, you see this on the bobcat, it may, and over here on the mountain lion, it may taper a little bit at the end. It's not quite as obvious though sometimes as the Canidae family, the dogs. So we'll look at that in a minute. You may also find hair, right? So hair can be a good clue of eating animals. Feathers, bones. So with our dogs, again, you see that taper more at the end. So do you guys all see that scat on the way up? That one was tricky because it, first of all, it had seeds in it. So it was definitely not a cat, right? It's not a bobcat. It looked like a pile of dog poop, right? It did not have as much of an obvious taper, but it was still there. The one thing though, one thing you see with dogs especially is they'll poop right in the middle of the trail because that's where everyone's going, right? So they're leaving that message there. My guess is that it was a fox. That's the one on the right. It was pretty large, so maybe it was just very hungry. I don't know. Maybe a red fox, which is a little bit larger than the gray fox. That's my guess. The one on the left is the coyote, and a lot of times with the coyotes, you'll see a lot more hair in it. They're gonna prioritize meat over any sort of fruit and vegetable matter, versus foxes that will eat kind of a larger percent of fruits, berries, roots of plants, things like that. But even wolves. Now, Canidae, the dogs, they're in the order Carnivora, but just because they're in that order does not necessarily mean that they are a complete carnivore, which is things like cats and the mustelids, the kind of the badger group. All right, good deal. Yeah, we'll talk about tracks. So with, there are two sets of tracks here. One is feline, one is canine. Which one is which? Cats on the right, dogs on the left. How do you know? The claws, but there's another clue here, right? So first of all, dogs are gonna have their claws out. Cats are little ninjas. They can pull their claws completely under their skin, except for the cheetahs. They're kind of the weird group. They're going to have semi-retractable claws. They use their claws more like cleats for running fast. So if you ever go to the zoo and you notice that the cats have an open air, the cheetahs have an open air enclosure, but like lions don't. It's because cheetahs don't really climb trees. They're not really worried about the escape upward. But with most cats, you would be, right? With dogs, for the most part, they're not going to climb trees. The exception, well, there are a few exceptions, but one of those would be gray foxes, which are one of the only members of the canine family that will climb trees because, like the cheetahs, they have semi-retractable claws. And in this case, it's keeping those claws sharp enough that they can climb trees. So the reason for that adaptation for our gray foxes is really helpful for them because they can get things like birds, bird eggs, squirrels more easily, and they're not having to compete with things like coyotes, where the coyotes aren't going to climb trees to get their prey. But the other clue that I see here is the track pattern. Because dogs in general don't climb trees, they track more like we do. Right, where they're, if you were to walk on all fours, where the back foot and the front foot are going to leave kind of separate paw prints. Whereas cats, because, and a lot of things that climb trees, you're going to see they walk in register, meaning the back foot exactly replaces the paw print of the front. And that creates a safety kind of mechanism for when they're climbing. If you climb trees, I have a rule for my junior master naturalists when they climb trees. When you are climbing a tree, you need 3 points of contact. And when you take your hand off to put it somewhere else, you're going to put your foot exactly where your hand was. because you already tested the weight of that spot and you know that it's gonna hold your weight, right? So we learn that from things that climb trees like cats. All right. Good deal. In some animals, you will have a somewhat visible little bulb on the underside of their skull called auditory bullae. So on our bobcat, they're pretty easy to see where these bulbs, they're actually going to house some of their inner ear organs. And so the larger these are, large meaning they're very round and they're very tall. In general, the larger they are, the better their hearing will be because the larger those hearing organs will be. If that makes sense. There you go. Yeah. All right. So in our cats, we're gonna have these kind of larger auditory bullae. They have a pretty decent sense of hearing. If you have a cat, you're familiar with that, yes. Dogs as well are gonna have a pretty decent sense of hearing. There are some animals like skunks. They don't have a great sense of hearing. Now, if we see the animal itself, you're like, how would I know that? How would I know what their auditory bullae look like? What do we usually look at to determine how an animal hears?
Ears.
Ears. These will actually relate to, in general, their ear size. The larger their ears are, in general, the larger these will be. So I kind of can correlate there. So for skunks, for example, they have these little tiny teddy bear ears, and you don't really see them in that picture. And on the skunk skull, you also would not be able to see, well, you can see the auditory bullae, but they're more flat and they're more kind of oblong. I'm not going to show you which one it is. You guys got to guess in a little bit. I'm not going to give all of those ones away. I've had something else. Ears can also be something that we have bred in animals, so domestic animals. The flappy ear gene often goes with variations in colors of their coat. So like the spotted and more white colored coats have been bred, and we have found that the floppy ears have also kind of come along with that breeding. So not typically something we're going to see in wild animals, floppy ears. With elephants, they use it for cooling themselves. So, all right, teeth. Any questions so far? Did I miss anything here? No questions, Bobby? All good so far? I'm being very clear here to you guys, or you're just like, I don't know what to ask. Okay, so for our teeth, there are three kind of main groups of teeth or types of teeth we need to look for. Starting off in the back, so these are both deer jaws, just for example. These are our molars, right? And have you guys ever heard that plant eaters have flat teeth? That is not helpful, because when you see something like this, those aren't flat, right? So here's what we're talking about. We eat plants, so we should have a similar shape of our tooth. So take your tongue, feel your molars. You'll feel there's kind of a dip in the middle, a little spot where Cheetos get stuck. That's the shape that we're looking for. So I like to say, if you could pour water on the teeth and it holds it like a little cup, then those are great for eating plants. The reason why we need these teeth is because plants are very difficult to digest. You'll notice things that eat plants, especially all plants or mostly plants, they have to chew and they have to eat a lot, right? We have to eat a lot more plants in order to get energy versus something that eats meat. Cats will get their prey, they'll cache it, and they'll eat a little bit at a time over the course of the week. They might catch one thing a week, and that's it, right? In the wild. I don't know about your cats, but you're like, I eat every day. So we spoil it. So with our, especially the ones that only eat plants or mainly eat plants, they're gonna have a lot more of those teeth as well, which will indicate a lot more need for chewing. In things like ruminants, so our deer, our cattle, goats, camels, giraffes, they chew it again, right? So that's what the cut is. They chew the grass or whatever, and it goes down into their stomach, one of their chambers of their stomach. They regurgitate it and they chew it again. And then they'll swallow it again. They gotta chew it so much in order to get all they can out of that food so they can be more efficient. We're not gonna talk about horses because they're very weird. So, but they chew a lot, they're not ruminants. So animal science, there was always a joke in the animal science department that God made horses first and realized all the mistakes he made. And so then he made all the ruminant animals. So I disagree, but whatever. So let's see, we got our molars. On a carnivore, complete carnivore, this is our bobcat. first of all, you have fewer molars there, right? They don't have to chew quite as much, but their chewing mechanism also is a little bit different, right? They go up and down. They don't have to chew side to side quite as much. This is going to be a reflection of the digestive system. So with those herbivores, those animals that eat a lot of plants, we're going to see a long digestive system, especially a more well-developed hind gut or kind of colon area, versus or I guess the whole large intestine in general. With carnivores, they have a shorter digestive system. It's a lot easier for our bodies to break down that meat and use it for energy. It's more efficient. So let's see. They're gonna have a shorter digestive system. But have you ever noticed, those of you guys who have cats, when you go to pick up your cat, they just slink and their body is like really long and they're just little slinkies. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so they do seem to have a large body cavity. What's the deal with that? If your whole existence depends on being able to catch something, to be able to eat, you gotta be really good at it. So that like space in their body cavity allows for larger lungs, a larger heart, and so they can sprint more efficiently. But anyway, so I think of our teeth as kind of a reflection of the digestive system, essentially. So with our carnivores, we not only see fewer molars, they're also going to come to a point in the middle. So where the herbivore teeth have, or the animals that eat plants, our molars have that little cup shape, those carnivore teeth are going to have that kind of mountain shape. So coyotes, for example, order Carnivora, they have some of those sharp molars, but like I said, they can digest and eat plants. So in the back, and you guys will get a closer look at this here in a little bit, but in the back, the actual molars, these are premolars, all these really sharp ones. In the very back, these true molars have the little cup shape in the middle, so they can eat plants. All right. Good deal. Incisors. Those are going to be our little teeth up front. I say little, a lot of times they are little, like here on our coyote. They're great for like picking at, like grooming themselves maybe, or mama cat carries her kittens around with those little teeth. But in general, we don't chew with those teeth. So it's not always a great hint as to what kinds of food they eat. But there are exceptions, right? What kind of animal does this one look like? It's a beaver. Beavers are they're in the group Rodentia, so are rodents. Rodents are the largest group of mammals. There are more rodents than any other kind of mammal. Does anybody know the second largest group? Bats, yeah, that's Chiroptera. Chiroptera means hand wing. You guys haven't talked about bats yet, right? Okay, so hand and chiro means hand, ptera means wing, like pterodactyl. So, are you getting Mari to talk about bats or?
No, that's you.
Me? I'm talking about bats today?
Well, because it's you.
Okay, I can talk about bats. I don't have anything on here about bats. But... Oh, do we have time or? Man.
Just a little bit of that. No, you just don't have a second.
Okay, good deal. Bats are great. That's what I have to say. I know I'm like preaching the choir. Bats are great. We have over 30 species of bats here in Texas. They're the second largest group we have of mammals in the world. We have split those into two groups. We have Megachiroptera and Microchiroptera. Mega is the larger, like flying fox kind of bats. And then Microchiroptera is going to be, for the most part, insectivores, are smaller bats. So all of our bats that we see here in the Houston area are insectivores. So they eat what? Insects, okay, just making sure. It's exactly what it sounds like. There are two species of bats here that will kind of migrate into the southern part of Texas that are nectarivores, which means they eat nectar. Yes, they're nectar eaters. So what we'll see on those nectar eaters is kind of a longer nose, and they're using that to smell out flowers, and then they have kind of a longer tongue as well. They may also not have those big ears like our insectivores need for echolocation, because flowers don't really talk back, or like, they're just not going to use those as much. But the flowers that they often eat have evolved alongside those bats to have kind of a tube-shaped flower. There was one, I think it's some sort of wild tobacco that I remember seeing, that at night it makes its flower into a tube shape for the bats, and then during the day it opens up for more of like our bee and butterfly pollinators too. So that's pretty cool, right? But those nectarivores, so you guys like margaritas? Our nectarivores are the Mexican long-tongued bat and Mexican long-nosed bat are ones that we have here in Texas. They're pollinating the agave plant. And one thing I will say, if you buy tequila, there are some tequila companies that will put a little sticker on it that says bat friendly. And the reason why they feel that it's necessary to say that is because it's not necessary for the agave plant to flower in order to harvest that agave to make tequila. And so if they don't let the plant flower, the bats don't have anything to eat. So there are some companies that will have a crop specifically to allow it to flower for those bats to eat. So look for that little symbol. Okay, good deal. We good, Bobby?
Yeah,
Okay, good deal.
yeah. Two Zoom users, I don't know who they are.
Who are you? All right. Welcome. But who are you? All right. So we have back to our rodents. So the largest group of mammals. What we see on our rodents like beavers is they have these really big incisors, right? And on the front, like coated on just on the front part, that orange stuff, a lot of people are like, ew, it's just they need to brush their teeth. No, it's iron growing on the front of their teeth. So that iron coating is helps it to be very strong, right? What do beavers eat? Trees. So they need some pretty strong teeth. Rodents also, their incisors are constantly growing. So as they get filed down by those trees, they'll just keep growing back. You will notice on the back side of those same teeth, it has the softer dentin like we have on our teeth. And so as they chew, it kind of just files down into a sharp point to use more like an axe function. Yes, I have more fun facts about beavers. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So from looking from the front of the skull, what do you see that's missing that we've talked about? What are some of the features that we talked about that you don't see looking at the
I
front?
can't.
Where are the eyes? Well, where do beavers live? In the water. So on the side here, you can see their eyes are more on the top, so they can swim and their eyes are above. They can also, you know, the little flap in your ear that you close to make things quieter. They have muscles that can control that without using their little fingers, so they can close their ears underwater. And then they also have that third eyelid. They can kind of close their eyes underwater while being able to see at the same time. And then, hold on, gets better. They also have, so rodents have a split in their lip, all rodents do. And in beavers, they'll actually take that lip and close it behind those incisors so that they can chew underwater without getting mouth in their water, or hold on to sticks and things and carry them underwater. I have one more thing. I don't know if y'all like this one. So beavers have a special oil gland that they'll spread that oil. It's called castoreum, the oil in it. And they'll spread it over their fur to make their fur more waterproof. The castoreum, the gland that has it, is the anal gland. And people, I don't know how the first person found out about this, but it smells like vanilla. And so if you see, oh, so sorry. If you see on ingredients, sometimes it says like natural vanilla flavor. It's not going to say castoreum, it just says natural vanilla flavor. We use it in some drinks like whiskeys and things as well, so. Enjoy some vanilla bluebell after this. It's not used all the time. It's kind of on the expensive side. We also use it in some perfumes. So anyway, have fun with that. You're welcome, and I'm sorry. All right. Thank you so much. I'm so full of them. I was at the prison last week, and they said that they were like, you just have so many facts, just random facts. I'm like, they're useless except for in this situation. So thank you for giving me an outlet. Trivia. Yes, I do trivia, but I think I do trivia. Whenever I do trivia, I'm like humbled because there's so many more facts about other things that I don't know about. So there's so much more to learn. One other thing that you'll see around here is you'll find a rodent that looks similar to the beaver, but I want you to kind of physically see the differences here. The beaver's on the left. What is the one on the right, do you think?
Nutria.
It's nutria, so it's gonna be a similar size. Sometimes a lot of times they're a little bit smaller. The beaver is very large. They're like 50 pounds. So these are big hunkers, little blobs of rodent. The nutria are gonna look very similar though. One thing you will notice, I don't know what it's called, but you'll see on the nutria, these little open cavities underneath the eyes, and you don't see that. The jaw, the bottom jaw of the nutria also flares out funny. So those are just some identifying features. I was at Lake Houston Wilderness Park one time, and they had a nutria on a nutria skull on a shelf, and they had it labeled beaver. So they've changed it since then. Yes, you know, now you're gonna spot it. Or no, it was at the Spring Creek Group.
There are lots of nutria in Lake Pine.
Yes, there are also otters. You guys seen otters?
Yes.
I have not seen the otter in person, but I've seen evidence of otters. It's so cool.
Nutria is scary when you're walking the dog.
Yeah, yeah. And there's like down in Spring, there are like signs at one of the parks, I forget what it's called down there, and it's like, please don't feed the nutria. They have parasites, they're not helpful for our ecosystem. And then there are people standing right next to the sign, like, here you go, here's some of my lunch. Like, people, come on. All right. Oh, one kind of confusing skull you might find, it may look like a rodent, but it is not, is lagomorphs. This group of hares and rabbits, they don't have that same iron coating on the front of their teeth, but on the incisors, so on the back, I don't know if you can see here, but on the back side of the top incisors, there's actually another set of teeth growing there. They're not like replacing the front teeth or anything. They're not like sharks. They're just there. I like to think of them, they're like herb scissors, you know, where you have multiple blades kind of stacked next to each other. So I assume that has kind of that kind of function. All right, good deal. But again, we see molars and the incisors. What we don't see, is that not the same one? Anyway, what we don't see on like our rodents or the deer are canine teeth. Canine teeth are typically going to be that kind of long hook shape on the top and the bottom. They're great for kind of grabbing onto things. So that kind of hook shape. So the kind of grab onto things. So the canine teeth can be an indicator of a predator. But remember those eyes, we're gonna look back at that other clue, right? Our eyes should be pointing forward. But there are exceptions to every rule. You don't have to be a predator to have canine teeth. Does anybody know what this one is? It's a native animal to Texas. It's not a hog. It's not even a type of pig.
Oh, they just say,
Javelina, collared peccary. So what we see in this it does look similar to a hog though, right? But we do see on this animal, we see canine teeth, and they look like little tiny skinny things there. And an older one, they're gonna be a bit bigger. And also the males are bigger. This might be a female here. So if they're bigger in the males than the females, that can be a good clue that, oh, well, maybe it's not really used for eating. They're used for digging in the ground. Let me see, did I put here? They're used for kind of rooting around in the ground for bugs and some acorns and other kind of mast and roots of plants. But they're also used to communicate, and they make this horrible, like squeaky sound, like nails on a chalkboard. So if you hear that, if you hear like a hog doing that, you go the other way. But you will notice the eyes on this animal are clearly to the side, right? So that's that clue you need to look for. Horses can have canine teeth, right? They're only going to be on the males typically, and they're going to be larger on wild horses than on domestic horses. So that's another good clue. They're like antlers on a deer. They're going to use them for fighting each other to prove their dominance. All right. I forgot what I had.
Another question for you.
Yes.
So why do people say javelinas are semi-rodent? Or kind of
They're
rodent?
peccaries, so they're more closely related to like hamsters, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And I mean, does that not look kind of like a big weird guinea pig?
Yeah,
That's not how science works. Like, it looks like guinea pigs, so it must be close related. But it is more, it's less of a hog and more closely related to those other things. All right. A couple of ones you might find. So here in more urban areas, you're going to find more red foxes than gray foxes. As you get out more into West Texas and more rural areas, you will find more gray foxes. A note on this. So if you see a dog-like animal crossing a road at night, and you're not sure if it's a coyote or a fox, foxes will run with their tails straight out, whereas the coyotes have their tails down towards the ground. Foxes are typically a little bit smaller. With a red fox, you're going to see that little white tip on the end of its tail. With gray foxes, it's going to have a black tip on the end of its tail. You think you think they look very different right now, but when you see one just darting across the road, it's hard to tell. But look for that little flash of white on the red fox. One thing I have noticed on the fox skulls is a little bit different here. So if you find one of these skulls by any chance, you'll notice the gray fox has a, let's see if I can see here, has a kind of that sagittal crest is kind of in a U shape versus the red fox has a V shape on its sagittal crest. And the way that I remember which one is which, you don't have to write this down, is their scientific name. So the gray fox, their species name is Eurocion, starts with a U sagittal crest. The red fox, Vulpus, which means fox, by the way, we don't get very creative. And that's the V. So anyway. So I have a skull up here that belongs to a fox, and your job in a minute will be to figure out which one it is. See if you remember. All right, quiz time. Does anybody want to guess what this one is? So take a second, look at some of those characteristics. We looked at the eyes, the nose length, kind of long nose. They got lots of little teeth. It's an opossum. So one way to tell for sure if something, so there are a few things about opossums. Do we have enough time for me to talk about opossums? Because oh my gosh. Okay. So opossums are the only marsupial native to North America, right? They're the only pouched mammal native here. And so she can have on average up to about 13 babies because she has a limited number of nipples in that pouch. When her babies are born, they're the size of a jelly bean. We call them joeys. They're actually going to crawl into that pouch, which is where they get the milk, but they're not in and out, in and out. They get in there, they get on a nipple, and the milk will just drip down their throat. The nipple will swell in their mouth and they're stuck on there. So they can't leave. So now's about the time of year. If you see an opossum get hit by a car, or if it looks pretty fresh, if you are bold enough to do so, please check to see if it's a female, if she has a pouch. If you check in there, there may be little babies that need help because they can't let go and go take care of themselves. They're stuck on there just drinking the milk product milk. They'll plop off like little grapes, just all of them, and bring them to Friends of Texas Wildlife, and we'll take care of them. We have to tube feed them because they don't have that sucking kind of function that a lot of mammals do to do that on their own. So after a couple months of being in the pouch, they'll crawl out and hang on her back. She'll teach them how to be an opossum. And when she's like, I'm really tired of you guys, after a couple more months, she will either scrape them off on a branch or shake them off and get out of here. They have a very low lifespan, a very short lifespan. They're like an old age opossum is like 2 years old. So if you see one around your house and you're like, I don't want it here, it's not going to be there for very long. Sorry. They're great though. So they have a little bit lower body temperature than a lot of other mammals. So they're not as likely to get rabies. They're immune to Lyme disease. They also have immunity to some venomous snakes, like copperheads and coral snakes, I believe. Rattlesnakes, I don't think that they have quite immunity to the same way, but they can get bit like 300 times by a copperhead before they're affected by it. And by that time, they'll probably just have eaten it. Yes.
So if you see a possum during the day, is that a sign that it's sick or anything?
No, that is a good question. We see this even with things like raccoons, and a lot of times people are concerned, like there's a raccoon out in the middle of the day. Think about the time of year it is. If it's in the springtime especially, that's probably a mama, and she's got to find food for herself, and she's got to get extra nutrients. So she's just got to take advantage. She's not getting a lot of sleep, and she's got to take advantage of all that she can to get food. get feed herself and her babies. Same thing with the raccoons. It's not a guarantee that it's sick or anything. It may just need more food. During the winter time, if you see them out more during the day as well, it just may be that there's less food available, you know, so they just have to feed more or find food more.
There was a few years back though, when they were getting distemper.
Yes, yeah, they can get distemper. So as long as your dogs are vaccinated against the common things like rabies, distemper, what else is it? What's that? Yes. So as long as your dogs are vaccinated against these things, it's not really a big concern. We have not seen rabies in raccoons in Montgomery County for over 25 years. So there's that. With rabies and bats, sometimes, so there are some sketchy statistical studies on bats out there about rabies. And there are some places that you find that says like 1% of bats have rabies. That's still too many, because the 1% of bats that they're testing for rabies are those that are suspected to have rabies. So that's too much. It's really like less than, like it's about maybe 0.5%. So the problem with bats is that they can't fly from the ground like birds can. So if you see a bat on the ground, it may have just gotten knocked down, may have avoided a predator, but can't fly from the ground. So if you find a bat, you know, don't touch it, absolutely. You can use a broom to, if you can, sweep it to the nearest tree, and it can climb up the tree like little Aggies. They just use their thumbs to climb up the trees, and then they can swoop and fly from there. Do you have a question? Good deal. There is a Houston area bat team that would also help with, and Gerald, is Gerald on the bat team, I believe? Have you guys met Gerald? No? Gerald Geisler?
Yeah.
No. We have resources. If you find a bat or you know somebody who finds a bat, just contact somebody in the Master Naturalist group, and we know how to take care of it. So we'll get you to the right person who can help you.
There are some states that don't allow you to rehab any animal that may possibly be a rabies vector. So if you find a fox kid, or a bat, or a raccoon, or any of those animals, they expect you just to kill it.
Sometimes, yeah. So here in Texas, it's illegal to relocate them. So if you have a raccoon like in your attic, and you call out a pest control company, and they'll say, we'll remove it, no problem. And it's probably a mama raccoon in the springtime finding a nice quiet space for her and her little kids. And the pest control companies will often take the mom and just leave the babies. And because I don't know, but then they don't relocate it. There's like 1 or 2 companies that's actually licensed to relocate these animals. Other than that, they put them in a drown tank and they drown. And then they leave the babies, and you call them back and you're like, there's still raccoons in my attic, and they're like, oh, they're babies, you want us to take them? We have to kill them. And you're like, no, don't kill them. And so then a rehabber has to deal with these babies that could have had their mom, and now they don't. So as best as possible, if you do have an issue with raccoons in your attic, they're finding a place that's quiet and dark. So make it not quiet and not dark. If you get a strobe light, especially if it's like a motion sensor strobe light, it comes on when she's moving around, turn on talk radio. They apparently hate the sound of people's voices. They don't like NPR, so and the mom will likely find another place for her and her babies, and then find where she was getting in and seal it off so she doesn't come back. With bats, it is illegal to remove bats from an area. They are protected. So there are some extra laws there with bats. Back to opossums. So opossums, they're also immune to Lyme disease. They can eat some ticks. They're eating a lot of like cockroaches. They can eat, again, those venomous snakes or other snakes. They might eat mice. They're eating a lot of berries and fruit as well. One thing, does anybody in here have horses by any chance, or is in an area with horses? There's one thing that, because of their lower body temperature, they're more likely to be a carrier for a parasite that can be found on carrion. And so if there's a carcass of an animal nearby and there's an opossum that will come and eat it, there's a small chance that they can carry this parasite that can be deadly to horses. A lot of people that I know who have horses, they're like, I hate opossums, but as long as you keep your area clean, there aren't any dead carcasses around, you should be fine. What else about opossums? I have another thing here. Notice how I'm saying opossum. The word opossum came from the Algonquian tribes in the Native Indian tribes here in America. They called it an opossum or an opossum with an A. The word opossum then gave us possum, which is an animal that lives in Australia and is not that. So this is an opossum, that's a possum. Everybody knows what you're talking about. When you say possum, everybody knows what you're talking about, but I have to teach people, so I have to say it right. And now you can say it right because you're a master naturalist and you can teach other people. Okay. All right.
But they make some antivenom from possums, like for snake bites and stuff.
I think so. I think they're working on using the biology of the opossum to make those antivenoms or create resistance of some sort to some snake bites.
They are so
They-
cute.
They are so cute. And I'm so glad you said that because some people are like, they're ugly.
And they're litter box trained when they're babies.
They're,
They're litter box trained, which is awesome.
yeah,
And
they're
one
like
of
cats.
one of the cutest
They're like-
things, and you can go to our channel on YouTube, is the baby possums tucking paper towels in their tail and carrying it out to put in their bed. It's
Oh, yeah, I've seen
so
that.
cute.
They have a prehensile tail, so sometimes you'll see that they'll kind of hold things in their tail to drag it with them. This also means in their tracks, you may see, so they have an opposable thumb on the back paw, and they'll use that for climbing. But you may also, in these tracks, you may also see some tail drags. So they can climb trees. Unfortunately, one of their defense mechanisms is to play dead. They're not actively doing that. They're fainting. They're not responsible for it. It's like the fainting goats. Their heart rate kind of slows down. They can emit kind of a stinky scent and trying to really play up the I'm dead, you don't want to eat me kind of thing. Unfortunately, I've seen, I was driving out near a field store and there was a black vulture that was like, you smell dead, please let me eat you. And this poor opossum was like, I'm not dead. I tried to run against So yeah, so that poor little opossum, oh, we got away. The vulture was probably so confused, like, why are you moving?
I looked out one day and my dogs had something, they were barking at. So I went out and it was an opossum and it was all wet. I mean, they had been licking on it and stuff. They hadn't hurt it, but it was like, so I took the dogs in the house and I watched. In a couple of minutes, I kind of looked around and went, okay.
Yeah, is it safe? Is it clear? They can be in that state for about 3 hours. So if there's an opossum like in your trash can or something and you're like, and it looks dead, don't like lay the trash can on its side because it may just be stuck and the poor dumb things. They're prehistoric. I mean, they're very old. They're a very old species. They've been around for a long time. But one thing I notice in their brain cavity is that it's very narrow. Not to say that they don't have a big brain, but they don't have a very big brain. But they don't need it, right? They don't live very long. So as long as they can live long enough to reproduce, that's all they need to do. I don't know, but it may make them have better adaptations for living longer, may make them smarter. But the problem is they're just not built to last long. They're just like little tanks. They get bone diseases very easily. And so once their joints start to break down, if they can't climb a tree, they can't survive. So sometimes we get opossums like that. In the
Are they
center.
a newer adaptation or have they been here since the dinosaurs and we have?
Yeah, they've been here since dinosaurs. I mean, they've been around. They're some of the older mammals species that have been around for a long time that have not evolved a lot since then. So Yeah, they figured it out, you know, they're doing fine. Yeah, it's all babies, yeah, but unfortunately that we're playing dead thing doesn't work on cars, so they get hit by cars a lot. We've also been able to track climate change with opossums because they don't have hair on their little feet or their tail. And so they can't live in places where they're going to get frostbite and lose those adaptations that will help them climb trees. So we found that they've moved more and more north as climate change has affected and created longer, warmer times during the year. So it's kind of like we look to birds to find out changes in ecosystems and things like that because they're easy to study. But opossums can also be one of those things we study. Yes.
We're gonna talk about armadillos.
We can talk about armadillos. What do you want to talk about? They're so cute. So armadillos are more closely related to anteaters. I have an armadillo, so I can pull it out. So anteaters don't have teeth, but armadillos do. They're insectivores. And their teeth are really like little nubby kind of things. They don't have incisors at all, actually. But they eat a lot of insects and they use that nose and they have like big claws that they'll use to dig in the ground. So we have lots of different kinds of armadillos. Actually, the 3-banded armadillo is the only one that's down South America. It's the only one that can actually roll up into a ball. Our 9-banded armadillos don't do that. Instead, they can dig very fast. If they can't get away from something, they're always surprisingly fast. You guys ever chased an armadillo before? I have. A little bit. Or a surprised one and they go, and then they can jump and like run away. That's them trying to look bigger. It again doesn't work on cars, so they get hit by cars a lot and they just get hit by the car. So then if they can't run away though, they'll take their little nails and they'll dig in the ground as fast as they can and shove their belly under there and try to get flat because that armor can really protect them. There's some cases of people shooting armadillos and it ricocheting and killing them.
I think that's fair.
Those are called consequences. Armadillos are. So first of all, when they give babies, they have a special uterus. That means that the way that they release eggs means that they'll always have 4 quadruplets and they're identical. So either all be female, they'll all be male. So if you see like 3 or 4 armadillos walking around, those are the little babies. They'll stay in a family group for a little while before they'll kind of be on their own. One negative thing we hear about opossums or about armadillos is that they're supposed to have leprosy, right? They can, but they got leprosy from us, from people's. That's a word, but it's weird in that context. So the thing with that though is leprosy sounds really bad, but most people, like 95% of people, are immune to it now. And it's a bacteria. It can be very easily treated if caught early enough. It is not, but at the same time, not all opossums, oh my gosh, we're not done talking about opossums. Not all armadillos have leprosy or carry it. And really the only way you would get it is if you like eat it. So don't eat armadillos. Problem solved. Yeah. A lot of times people also have issues with armadillos digging in their garden beds, especially when you have fresh mulch. They have really poor eyesight. They have decent hearing with those big ears, but they have a really good sense of smell. So once they smell that fresh mulch, it's a sign that there will be insects there. That's what they're looking for. So they dig. Do what?
In a suburban area, where are they living?
Under things. You'd be surprised the little tiny holes they can fit into. Yeah, underneath your foundation. Oh yeah, the ditches on the
dishes. Yeah. We haven't figured out where it is yet, but we see all those.
They're just eating grubs.
do what?
They're eating grubs.
Yeah. So they're eating the insect larvae, which is great. They're eating those things like the cicadas that are under there. They're hanging out, waiting for time to bloom. cicada killers, those big old wasps, you know? And there are a lot of wasp species that lay their eggs underground, and their larvae will develop alongside the cicadas because that's what they eat, you know, things like that. They're eating ants and things, so they're doing a really good job. I really appreciate their contribution to society. But there are some people who just don't. So, yes,
So I love armadillos. When I worked
welcome
in-
to the club.
Yeah, I worked in the safety part, so
Uh-huh.
you have any ways to deter the type of sort?
They can't climb things, so there's that. They have that really good sense of smell. So if you can go to like Academy and get predator urine scent, or y'all are really weirded out. If you pee on your area, or you have a dog walking around in your area.
Mercer, you know stuff?
So I was here at Mercer last weekend, and there are, you know how there are like the little placards identifying the plants?
Yeah.
There were placards identifying the little armadillo holes, like armadillo, I made an armadillo species.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cute. Like, they're,
Gave
yeah,
That's.
yeah, especially,
That's good.
don't do mothballs.
No.
First of all, illegal way to use mothballs. I'm so glad you brought that up. They're a chemical that is really bad for the environment. And they can also cause liver or kidney failure in cats. So, and the thing about cats, outdoor cats kill more than 3 billion birds in the US alone each year. Outdoor cats, not a good idea, but there still are going to be things that will be affected by the mothballs. Yeah, so don't use them. Do what?
So our waterways.
Yeah.
The box there.
Oh, and like the chemicals going into the water. Yeah, yeah. So it is a pesticide, the mothballs. So avoid using that stuff outside for sure. Yes.
I have a chat question from Kat. Would the same deterrents work for squirrels as raccoons in an attic?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's worth a try.
They make a little thing I put in my barn. It's a mouse deterrent. You plug it in and it makes this kind of little squeaky noise every now and then, but basically it just flashes.
Uh-huh.
I bet it's the same thing.
Yeah,
Those work,
That works.
some squirrels.
yeah. So we're talking about those of you guys, I don't know if y'all can hear, like rodent deterrents. And so there are some of those that, yeah, may work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You know, based on the difficulty level of keeping squirrels away from my bird feeder, I don't imagine it would work for very long if it does work. But maybe just long enough, if it's in your attic, maybe just long enough to get them out and cover the hole where they can't get back in. With bats, there's something called a bat excluder, where it allows the bats to come out, but then it doesn't allow them to come back in. So if you have bats in your attic, that can be a good deterrent.
Bats in your belfry.
What?
Bats in your belfry.
Bats in your belfry, yeah. All right. Any guesses on this guy? This is another very common one that if people find even just a quarter of the jaw bone, I know what it is. It's a very common animal. We've talked about it already. It is a raccoon. So this one, it is. These guys are omnivores. This is really tough to tell, I think, just on the side, what you're seeing with the teeth here. When you open up that jaw, those molars are that, like all of them are really that little dip shape, like we have on our molars. But everything about a raccoon is not big and flashy on the skull, what I mean. So their nose is kind of on the medium side, their eyes kind of on the medium side. The skull shape, the skull size itself, kind of a medium-sized animal. The ears, the auditory bullae, kind of a medium size. So, but these are pretty common when people find skulls and like text me pictures and like, what is this? It's probably a raccoon or an opossum, most likely, or something domestic, like a domestic dog or something. They have little hands. I think my next one. They have these. Oh, there we go. They have these little hands, and They do not have opposable thumbs. So that's why when you see a raccoon pick something up, they go like this with their hands. Oh, so cute. And then their little back feet are also a little bit elongated too, but you will see those 5 toes there on the back feet as well. Their feet are really, all their paws are very sticky. And so they're very tactile animals. They are riverine species, meaning they've evolved in river areas or freshwater areas. And so when you see a raccoon take its food and dump it in water, it's not washing it. They're really not very sanitary animals. They're very messy, but they're trying to make it more like squishy. They're trying to feel it. And so it makes it a different texture for them. You guys ever seen the video of the raccoon who takes the cotton candy and dumps it in the water? And it disappears and he's like, oh no. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. It's so cute. Yeah.
We had a raccoon take koi out of the pond.
Oh yeah.
Ate the koi and left it.
Oh, that's so nice of him. How horrifying.
We gave the koi to a place that had a large pond.
Poor thing. I see sometimes on like Nextdoor, people post like their koi pond with a heron sitting there. Oh, that poor thing. The fish, I mean. With raccoon scat, so the type of food that we saw in that scat example on the path over there looked very raccoon-esque. The weird thing though, first of all, it was very big, but second of all, it was not messy like raccoons are. Raccoon scat is like just a mass of scat. But they will have, it looks very similar to that one that we saw. So take a look at that again. You'll see those seeds. You may see even berries. This also takes a little bit of knowledge in knowing what's in season. So in like August, September, you'll see more beautyberry seeds in there. In the summer, you'll see grape seeds and even grape skins in there, right? Right now, the seeds that we're seeing is probably dewberries. So it's kind of interesting to correlate those things. But they are omnivores, huge omnivores. One thing with raccoons is we have issues with them getting into our trash cans. Sometimes when I talk to kids about like, how can you help create a healthy habitat for something like a raccoon that you see in your neighborhood? They're like, I'll leave the trash can open so you can get into it. Maybe opposite. We got to secure the trash can. There's not good food in there for it. It needs to be eating things in the wild. They will eat insects and things as well.
And dog food.
And dog food. So with raccoons, they're very bold. They'll just come right up to your back porch or wherever to get dog or cat food. Really not good for them either in the long run, because, so here's one thing. Have you guys ever seen, I don't know how many of you guys are like on TikTok or Instagram, but there's a lady that I saw who has raccoons that regularly come up to her kitchen window, and she feeds them through the window, and everyone's like, it's so cute. This is such a bad idea. Great for you, you know, like, that's so cute. What a neat experience. But these raccoons are being conditioned to go to people. So the next, you know, this raccoon goes next door and is like, hey, you're also a person. I bet you have food too. And that person's like, you look like you have rabies because you're like coming right up to me and being very aggressive. This is not a good idea. That raccoon will eventually probably be put down. The national parks, I think they have like a saying, like a fed bear is a dead bear, right? So the more you feed it, the more aggressive it will become to get that food too. And the more reliant it is on people. Like I'm preaching to the choir, I have to say it though, don't intentionally feed these animals. Pick up your cat food and dog food at night if it is outside. Again, cats really not a great thing for our ecosystem, so avoid keeping your cats outside in the first place. But I understand there are exceptions if your cat runs away or something, you're trying to get it back. I've seen that sometimes in Stevens neighborhood. So yeah.
We went to Yosemite in 1967. I was young then. And one of part of the evening entertainment was at the trash can watching the bears come. Yeah, they purposely put trash cans out there for the bears. Now you see, you're really young, so you don't know that people in my generation, we were trained to say, oh, we'll feed the bears so we can see them.
I've seen pictures, definitely. That used to be a thing. But then there are altercations with bears and people, and that can get a little scary to me. So
Yellowstone bears and people and bison.
Yes.
Oh, people are so.
Oh, bison. That's another thing. It's like, oh, she's a big cow. I also wouldn't walk up to a random cow, so that's just me. All right. So you can find these kind of track guides if you were interested in figuring out what kind of track you were looking at. So first of all, places to find tracks I would look for. I'm going to give you guys a good vocabulary word here. Ecotones. Ecotones is like the edges of things. So it could be the edges of different habitats like prairie versus forest. It could be different times of year. So spring and fall are great times to be looking for changes in that ecosystem as well. Things will be moving through more quickly. Things will be looking for food in either an emergency situation, you're getting ready for winter, or in the springtime, there's just an abundance. So there will be more things moving around. You'll also find more tracks, again, more likely in water areas. Maybe it just rained recently and there's a big puddle. Watch that puddle over a few days, see what kinds of things visit it, or ponds. But you'll notice several different kinds of tracks. First of all, our raccoons are going to be probably the easiest to spot. They're very bold, and there will be a number of those tracks walking around that area versus something like a deer. Where's a deer? So hoofed animals or deer at the top left, they're going to walk down and then try to get out of there as soon as possible. Raccoons will stick around for a little while. So you'll find more tracks more easily there. Things like coyotes and gray foxes as well, they'll kind of go down and try to leave as quickly as possible. They're not going to stick around that area. Let's see. So the track pattern, though, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with our cats versus dogs. You'll notice that our ground kind of animals will often track like we do, like opposite here, versus anything that climbs trees, including squirrels. Where are the squirrels on the right on the bottom? They're going to have their back feet will land in front of their front feet. And it's, imagine like you're grabbing a tree and you're pushing off, and then you're gonna land your back feet like that. Anyway, this could be a helpful little key. You also notice there will be size differences. So there's a lot of kind of factors that go into that. If we have time, we can go on a little hike and see what we can find. We'll figure out which way we can go if y'all are interested. Okay. Questions? Any questions I missed, Fabian? Zoom? I don't see anything besides since the turns of the squirrels to the raccoon. So that's it. Good deal. So you guys on Zoom, if you guys have any other questions, just pop those in. We'll talk about that. Those of you guys who are here, feel free to, I want you guys to kind of come up and check out the skulls that I have and kind of mix them around here. This coyote skull, I identified that for you guys. It's the only one that's not real. The other ones are real. Either they were given to me or they were part of my kind of work set. I'm gonna get this other one out here for you guys. And some of the fur as well. The fur is not, I mean, you're not gonna find like a fur outside, but they're just kind of interesting. You may find like tufts of fur that like predators have left behind. Sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not. But, you know, take a look, what, you know, how many times have you gotten to pet a skunk? So feel free to pet the animals.
I have a friend that's a rehabber, and I helped her feed her baby skunks.
They're so cute, little stinkers. So here's, this one's the beaver fur, this like just round one. And so this is, when you feel it, it's very soft. That's that castoreum oil I was talking about. So I'm gonna lay these out over here. And here's the deer as well. If you guys would like to come and feel these, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna go get the other stuff, and then we'll talk about outreach. And then if we have time, we can go on a hike and check out what we see. The outreach stuff, I wanted to recap here our skulls, and there's one more thing that I have to tell you guys. But first, let's kind of go through here. We got the coyote. And what was this one? I know I mentioned it earlier, but you guys remember carnivore, big eyes, flat nose. Yes, and it's okay if you even just have a general thought of like just cat family, right? Because that can help you narrow it down from there. This one. Beaver, it does not have those open cavities. The little smaller one, I know he's missing kind of the flare on the jaw here. This one is a nutria. Yeah, see the little open here? There was another one here, another big rodent. May have thrown you off because we didn't talk about this one. Any ideas on this guy? It's a native Texas animal. It's not a groundhog. This would be the largest groundhog you've ever seen in your life. I'll give you a hint. This animal's fur has been adapted to protect it. Porcupines, yes. Porcupines are rodents as well. They also have this open cavity here. Porcupines are hilarious. They're so dumb. They have been known to, so they can climb trees, and they've been known to fall from the trees and impale themselves. So they're slow. They're both mentally and physically. What about this one? What is this one? So just general group of animals. Long nose. It's a member of the canine family. So back here you said fox. Is it a gray fox or a red fox? It's a red fox. How do you know? Because it has the V on the top. That's right. Because you saw the picture. Okay. What about this little one? Long nose. We see it's an omnivore, but it does have a lot of little teeth. It's an opossum. Very good. Now, one way to tell for sure if something is an opossum is by counting the teeth. They have 50 teeth, more than any other land mammal in North America. So if you count, like even if I have just a quarter of the jaw. So down here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's 26 down here on the bottom. The top will have 2 fewer than the bottom. So 24. 26 plus 24, 50. Awesome. Awesome opossum. What about this one? This one looks kind of like a rodent, but doesn't have that same iron coating on the front of their teeth.
Rabbit.
It is a rabbit. Now, with rabbits and hares, a lot of times we said the lagomorphs have that set of teeth behind the top set of incisors. A lot of times when we get skulls from these animals, those top teeth fall out very quickly. And so these don't have the teeth in them, but they still have those holes there that you may have seen. Okay. And you may have noticed the auditory bullae here on the rabbit are fairly large for such a small animal. Rabbits have big ears, right? That correlates to that. Okay, get back together here. All right, down to the last 3 here. Guesses on this one. Kind of medium-sized nose, medium eyes here. Kind of medium-sized animal.
Raccoon.
It's a raccoon. Yes. So this one again is one of the more common ones that people find and ask me what it is. They're like, I don't know what it is. There's nothing that stands out on this animal. It's all pretty average looking. If that makes sense. What about the little one? It is a skunk. So you may have noticed here on the skunk, so we got kind of smaller eyes, right? They don't have the best eyesight. They don't have the longest nose, kind of medium. They have a decent sense of smell. But one very important characteristic here is the auditory bullae are really tiny. Remember those really small ears? They don't really need to hear things sneaking up on them, right? They're more reliant on that pattern of their fur color. Those are warning stripes. Things can see those from far away. They're not camouflaged. They're wanting to stand out. So predators see those and they, unless it's like your dog, they pretty much know what that means, right? And then this one has a little bit of its tail in it. Did y'all see this one as well? They have this long little pointy nose. They only have molars or space for molars in the back. There actually aren't any incisors there on that animal. The tail is kind of scaly. And this is the armadillo. Yeah, it's in a baggie because it's a little smelly still. But if you didn't see it, it'll be here. I'll let you guys see that. Okay, so the last very important clue for me if y'all find a skull and you don't know what it is, and you're like, I bet Adrienne knows what it is, I'm gonna send her an email. Please do. I love it. It's like a little puzzle for me. But make sure you can show how big it is. This is apparently not something I taught my dad. He was hiking with his friend in Massachusetts, and they found a skull on his friend's property. And he sent me a picture of the skull on a table. There was no sense of scale. And it kind of looked like this. I mean, maybe a little bit longer nose, but it was definitely an omnivore. It had kind of medium-sized eyes. I'm guessing maybe something that's diurnal or maybe crepuscular, I don't know. Kind of average looking skull. And I was like, I don't know. I need a little bit more help. Send me a picture with you like holding it. It was like this big. And so I was like, okay, so not a raccoon, it's definitely a bear. I gotta know how big it is. So sense of scale is really important. If you don't send me a picture with a sense of scale, I'm gonna send it back to you and say, try again. You get a C, you're gonna get an A if you give it to me with the correct sense of scale. Okay, any other questions about that stuff before we move on? Okay, so you guys, we're not gonna spend a whole lot of time on this. But we're going to talk a little bit about doing outreach. So this means, and what I'm specifically talking about is going to an event where you're going to be at a booth, at a table. Here's how this works. We have events that we coordinate with places around the area. We're aware of these events we go to regularly, or we hear about events. If you hear about an event that you'd like to go to, feel free to sign up for those events, to volunteer, to get a booth. I will typically be the one who's coordinating with the person who sets up the event to say, Texas Master Naturalist, the Heartwood chapter would like a table at that event. So I've done that at Mercer before for the Pollinator Fest, and we just need volunteers. And it's more helpful to have a few volunteers than just one. That way, so bring a friend with you. You guys are doing these in group projects this year for your group projects. And so, get to know the other people in the chapter or here in your intern class, and grab a friend, bring one with you, because it'd be nice to be able to go to the bathroom and eat lunch when you're there. Or at least, if you can't stay the whole day, that's fine. There will be opportunities. If there are other people there, it will be easier for us to kind of switch out, if that makes sense. These events are super fun to be at, right? If you've ever been to an outdoor event that, has the booths and stuff, it's fun to go around and look at other people's stuff. And it's fun to be at that event and be able to talk to people about the Master Naturalist groups and what we do. And that's pretty much what it is. You are going to go stand at a table. People are going to walk up to the table and you're going to go, have you ever heard of a Master Naturalist? Have you? And they're like, is it the same as Master Gardeners? And you're like, no, but we do more things that are fun. No offense to Master Gardeners, but Master Gardeners after I said that. But we, if there are lots of people who have different things that you like, right? You identify with different topics that you've learned throughout this intern process. So we use, this is from the North Texas chapter, is that right? So can our Zoom people, can they see this if I keep talking? Let me move back here. Where are we?
Keep talking.
Very good. So what we have here, you stop talking, hold on, here, you stop talking. Okay, so we have our board here. This is in our Master Naturalist, our office at W.G. Jones. And so all you have to do is coordinate with somebody. I'm gonna move over here, he's gonna follow me here, so you guys can see this better. Maybe, maybe not, here we go. All right, so here's we've taken this and adapted it from the North Texas chapter that had this at an annual meeting a few years ago. We're like, we love this, we got a copy of this. And it just is kind of like little badges, that you see for like park ranger, junior park ranger things, where you get a little badge and you identify with some of these people. So a lot of times people are like, I'm really into birds, or I would really like to get more information about geology. So this is something that you might identify. We have some examples on here. Carolyn showing some little insects, no bug lady. We got, I'm over here with some of the things I do for Friends of Texas Wildlife, the wildlife biologists, geologists, botanists. So we got something for everybody. You just got to find your niche. And you can be all of these things you know, and it's just telling people what we have to offer in terms of volunteer opportunities, things that they'll learn. And that's what you're gonna do at a booth. So what we're gonna talk about for what we need for the group project, do you wanna explain a little bit about that, what the goal is?
So each of the groups has picked a topic. So if they were asked to come to Club Woods for the Hummingbird Festival, they might present on pollinator plants for hummingbirds, to attract hummingbirds. So each of the groups has picked that from that list you gave us about the different topics. They picked their own topic. I know we have some of them doing soil, some of them doing native plants, some of them doing birds. What are some of the other topics y'all are doing? Trees, bats. What else? I heard a third one. Trees. Native plants, yes. And so they're going to look through the materials that are in the filing cabinets, and they're going to decide if we need more information to hand out. And so on graduation day, which is June 24th, they're going to have booths set up. We're going to set up outside at Avila. And then what we're going to do is invite the chapter to come through. And then they're going to be the booth presenters.
Great.
Isn't that awesome?
It's so awesome.
I'm very excited.
So you might be thinking of, well, what do we need for these things? So I brought just a very small little piece of some of the things that we have. We have a few other kind of posters and things you might bring. You can make your own poster for this, or, you know, gather some, this is a Velcro board. So if you want to use this, you know, have pictures and things that you just switch it out with that, fantastic. As far as like hands-on materials, these can be fun for kids that, you know, who want to come and check out what it is. Since we are an adult organization, you might also have some things that just pique their interest and have people come over and see. With outdoor events, which most of these things are, be aware that this will blow away or fall down, okay? So be aware of like materials that you don't want to have to hold everything down. There at the office, we have so this comes in a big container thing. We also have buckets of materials. So you guys are gonna go look through that when?
Different groups have already been through.
Okay, great.
And so other groups have asked me when to go, and we're gonna just go on weekends now because
Mhm.
we have somebody who's living in the office.
Okay, very good. So these kinds of things will be in the file cabinets. These are just little life cycle models. So you might use this to quiz people on their knowledge. You know, if you know something about the mosquito life cycle, you might ask, you know, what are these called? Those are the eggs. And then they actually have kind of a complete metamorphosis where they go through these 4 stages. They have a pupal stage. They might want to talk about, like, well, when they're a larva, you know, what do they eat? And why is that different from the adult? There are different species of mosquitoes. I don't know, whatever you know about mosquitoes or frogs or their butterflies. And sometimes it may be specific to the event that you go to, like the Pollinator Fest. I might choose to focus on pollinators. This is a little beaver chewed stick that was from Spring Creek Greenway. So if you have materials like that that you would like to donate, perfect, you know, and put that in the collection. We don't have our own set of skulls. So I don't use this one and the armadillo very often. I will probably just donate those to a collection. So anybody doing mammal stuff, you know, skulls aren't easy to come by necessarily, and they're very expensive. So you may have to do a little research on like Skulls Unlimited, or there's another one I'm thinking of. Acorn Naturalist maybe has skulls, tracks, things that might just be interesting for hands-on materials. Fake scat. You know what? There's like fake scat that a lot of times they're like the little rubber things. I am not a fan of those because they're all the same color and you can't like see the stuff inside. So when you see scat in real life, like take a stick and pick it apart, you know, and you don't do that. That's what I do. You wouldn't do that in those little rubber things. So I'm not a fan of those. I would say leave that off the list. It's nice for like, oh, the bear scat is bigger than the skunk scat, but that's kind of like duh, right? Anyway, something else I was gonna say here. Oh, this guy. Whenever you are going to an event, we will figure out how to coordinate with somebody who will be at WG Jones at a convenient time for you to meet and pick up the materials. A lot of times I'm at those events, but for my work. And so I'm not going to be at the booth with you, but I might be nearby. A lot of times for those events, if I can, I'll ask if I can be put next to the same table, like my work and Master Naturalist, that way we can combine. But when you go to WG Jones, make sure there are a couple sheets that are in a manila folder. I don't think that's the right word. It's in a pouch that says outreach booth sign up material list sign up thing. That's not exactly what it says, but you get the idea. It's on a little clip on a magnet on one of the big filing cabinet drawer thing. Now with myself, just saying thing a lot, and you're like, okay, y'all who haven't been there are like, I have no idea what to expect when you get there. Yes. So when y'all have been at WG Jones, it's like the room behind the classroom, there's a little office there. So it's just a little room. There's not a lot of space, and right now they are taking up some of that space with the office from the WG Jones offices because they're redoing their offices. So they're living in there for now. But please make sure you sign out the items. That way, if anything gets goes missing from the table when you get back, and we're like, okay, the last person who had it was here, so it's, misplaced at this point. If this person doesn't have it, then it's gone forever. It's never happened, but we know that we would have to replace it instead of just, oh, I forgot it's in my car, right?
And we also have, instead of just this, because like Adrienne said, it can blow over. So if it's like April, early April, March or something, and you're asked to go, you may not want to bring something that has a tendency to blow away because it gets windy. We have some sandwich boards that just sit on the ground and they're heavy enough, and they have that center emblem blown up. And when people would come by a booth that I would be manning and they'd stop and look at it, I'd go, so which naturalist do you think you are? And they would immediately go, bird, right? Or, oh, I love everything about the outdoors. And then you can engage them in conversation. Most of what y'all have picked, I don't think we had anything that was just specific to being a master naturalist. I think everyone picked like a topic to go for. But this would be if you did, even if you do go to one that's like homeowners or whatever, you can bring that and set that up next to it to let them know that's who you identify with.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I feel like I'm making this overcomplicated. It's really very simple. When you sign up to attend a booth, we'll just make sure we have enough volunteers to, fill the spot for that day. And then we'll let you know who needs to pick up and drop off the stuff at the office. And while you're there, I think a lot of people are intimidated by being at a booth because they're like, I have to talk to the public, like public speaking, people hate it. But it's just like how many people have you talked to about the Master Naturalist program since you joined? And you've been like, this is great. I really enjoyed doing this. We've learned about this. Just say that stuff to the people who are walking up to the table. You're not talking to a crowd of people. It's just like individuals. So I want to make it at the least amount of intimidating as possible. And I want to be clear on that because I think sometimes I'm like, you'd be really good at the booth. You would love it. And they're like, oh, I don't think so. That's not for me. I'd rather do other volunteer service. It is like the easiest way to get volunteer hours. So the people who have been coming to booths regularly, the first time they come, they're really nervous. And then they just want to do that for a lot of their volunteer service hours because they're like, this is a lot easier than I thought it would be. So
A few of us went to Montgomery, the tree giveaway.
great.
We were there, and we didn't have a lot of people come to the table, but those that came, kids, they had fun.
Yeah, for sure. There will also be, and this, I don't know where it is. There's a piece of paper, a journal where we write down people's, I'm assuming it's in one of those like rolly containers?
What we're gonna do now is we have a QR code that we're gonna post on each table that immediately brings them to the sign up. So that way, because we discovered that we can't really read people's handwritings anymore. Yeah. So what we do now is we're gonna have a QR code laminated that everybody puts on the table with them. And they can automatically go in and sign up for the TV newsletter.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And make sure, because I'm one of those people who has a phone who does not do QR codes. So make sure it has the website on it. It's not an old phone or anything. It just doesn't do it. Don't laugh at my phone. Make fun of me.
Is there an app?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I don't need another app on my phone. Come on. I got what I need. I got Audubon. I got BirdNet. I'm good.
I laugh because my husband, he has a smartphone. He just be like, I don't know. And I'm the one that I'm like, always scanning, like, and he's like, no, I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah. That's me. Like, I don't have it on my phone and I'm good without it. If everybody would just know that not everybody has a QR code. It's like we go to restaurants and the menu is only QR code. It's like, man, I gotta like Google your restaurant to find your menu. Come on, make it easier for me.
I'm not coming back if I can do that.
I know. You know what? I just need something to complain about. That's what it is. I don't have enough to complain about. All
I
right.
had to finally break down and get a new phone,
Listen,
so I could load, like, because my phone was old. and it wouldn't
We
take
talk.
days.
We talk. We find things to complain about.
It's mostly me, but.
So,
Okay. Gotta get this stuff out of the way.
So
What else?
we have at the office, we have these small trunks. They're about,
Oh, yeah.
we have these trunks that are about this big. And they roll. It has a tablecloth in it that says Texas Master Naturalist. It's green with the white emblem on the front. We have because it's big enough, when you pop it open, you can grab any of the outreach materials that you want to bring with you. Now, y'all are going to be possibly creating more outreach materials. And we will find ways to store that so that in the future, somebody comes up and needs something that's just about pollinator plants for the Hummingbird Festival. We'll have that on the bookshelves in there, and it'll make it easier to grab things and go and just put it in that trunk and roll it out and you're ready to go. So whenever you get to where you're going, you've got this thing that's ready to roll, literally. So, and it makes it really easy to keep things together. If you go out and you're manning a booth and it's a hot, wet day and somebody spills a Coke on the tablecloth or whatever, you can take it home or wash it or let someone know this needs to be laundered. This, I'm not going to take it to a laundromat or whatever. It's not that massive. You can throw it in the washing machine and it dries very beautifully. But if you need somebody to do that for you, just call and tell either Adrienne or the president or whoever, there's a tablecloth in there that's going to need to be cleaned before you use it again. And so we'll go out and we'll get it done. Okay.
The president is Sharon,
Yes.
not Joe Biden.
No. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why that was the first thing popped in my mind. I was like, why would he need to know?
Why would Joe Biden want to know that he needs to wash the tablecloth? No, it's Sharon. It's Sharon Newsom, totally different president. Take it down a notch. Oh my God.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It took me a second. I was like, oh yeah, that's
that's
Sharon.
Now, there are a couple of things that are more geared toward kids. We do have a pollinator project where they put together with pasta. It's little pasta, little round pastas that represent the egg, the little squirrely one that looks
like a caterpillar.
like a caterpillar. We have the
Pupa, the shell.
The shell one is pupa, and then the bow tie is the butterfly.
And then we make a necklace.
You make a necklace, you glue them onto little leaves. We've discovered that the glue takes a little long to set up. So what we do sometimes, we have little paper bags, we put the whole little project in that and let them take it with them.
Smart.
So, yes. So if you think of things like that, that would be a great thing for us to do with the kiddos as they come up while we're talking to parents, things that we can give to the kids, then you can add that to your group stuff too. The soils, are you doing soils, Stephen?
No, we're doing.
I am.
Democrat.
Okay, so there's a soil shake thing that Adrienne does with her kid group. That's amazing. So you might want to get with Adrienne and see what that's.
So
all
we
about.
take the jar and water.
Yeah, just
and
take
then layers
some
it
soil.
out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, those are good. They have pre-made ones too, so they're, little clear layers than if you just grab a random sample of soil. But yeah.
Yeah, so if you need to buy something like that for your table, let us know and we'll tell the board we're buying stuff.
During the Conroe tree giveaway, Darla and I were at the hardwood table, and the most questions we got were, how old did the kids have to be to be with natural, Texas natural?
That's a good question. It's 9 to 13. So that information they can find on the website when they get directed to the Heartwood website. We have a tab for junior master naturalists. So all that information is
More
on
people
there.
sign, more people's parents sign the kids up for that than anything else.
Perfect. Yes.
So when we're doing this research project, what will we put? We can clock in hours for that, right?
Yes.
What, since I'm new to clocking in my hours.
Last time, Adrienne, but William has been all through class and not input a single one of his hours. He did since our last meeting.
Oh, we changed it.
He's done it. William's caught up.
I'm so bad at that too. I feel like I would have had 1,000 hours by now if I'd actually put in all the work.
Honestly, it should be a pen at this point.
For just starting to put your mind. Congratulations, you put in an hour.
What would we put that under for the
Research hours.
naturalist?
For the mess, so what we're doing is we're looking at it as, because the ultimate goal of this is going to be public outreach. You're gonna put it under PO for public outreach and PO for public outreach. And then you're going to put the description will be group project for public outreach, okay?
Would y'all rather us just keep that in and do one massive hour log at the end, or just?
It may,
I'm just wondering.
he wants to make it as easy as possible. If he enters it once, he's a happy guy. Okay, so what you want to do is you probably don't want to go over like 8 hours or something. Some of the things when you input it will say from this date to this date. PO does not do that, okay? So it's like mostly field research. We'll let you put in like from this date to this date, I did Project Fever Watch. PO does not let you do that. So if you say that you've been doing it for 8 hours straight, Melissa may say, I don't think so. And she may say, you need to break this down. So what you can do is, because you know how to write to Melissa, right?
I do have a phone number.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. Shut your honey, keep it in mind. So what you can do is ask Melissa how she prefers to get it,
Okay,
and then she'll know how to be looking for it from you.
perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
Did you have a question, Annette? No. You were just like.
Question on the coding, like the work bill hours specifically for government park.
Right.
Because they want to keep it used for their outreach, so they need to drop that in the Jesse Jones Park PO and put it under.
You can do PO Jesse Jones Park. You can do PO Jesse Jones Park, because they want whatever you're doing to be just for their park.
Yeah, they want to keep it and then use it for their outreach.
Oh, that's very exciting. That's really cool.
I bet Jen knows that.
PO Jesse Jones. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Have you,
I
have you
think-
met John? John
I
Kerry?
have not yet. Is he awesome?
Okay, so
Is he like Ranger John?
I don't think I met Ranger John.
You haven't met Ranger
I
John?
don't think so.
We need to swap Johns.
Okay.
Okay.
Kind of changing the subject, but on coding, I've signed up to do the weather thing where you, the water.
Yeah, the rain gauge.
The
rain,
Coco
hail,
Ross.
snow.
Coco Ross.
Yes.
Coco Ross.
So Is that like 15 minutes a week or some kind of thing that you?
Bobby, do you remember what the?
I don't remember, but there is a limit, yes. But that's a perfect example of where you say it's from this day to this day.
When I talked to her last week about it, she just says like 2 hours a month, so if you want to do like 25 minutes each week, or just wait for say 2 hours.
2 hours a month?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, you just do it monthly and say 2 hours.
Just have to remember.
I've ordered my rain gauge.
Have you not gotten it yet?
No.
Because I
ordered it.
I had ordered it in bulk, so that way it was cheaper. What'd you do? How did you miss that, Pat?
I don't know, it's missed that. Anyway, I ordered the rain gauge.
Do you guys have any questions? And Bobby, are there any questions, or Carolyn, on the Zoom about other specific topics for outreach that you guys are researching and finding materials for, or anything else? Just think about the audience. I'll come back to you, Shelley. Just think about the audience, like Shelley was talking about. It's going to be a lot of families at these events. So you will have kids, you will have adults. And it's really, you know, how do we reach these people who are interested in attending and becoming a part of our chapter? The chapter is growing so much.
Well, I was telling
So
them that
much.
we had like 68 people apply for this class.
Wow. You guys are the lucky ones, huh? You got through.
They got there.
So, and you know, they may want to know, what is the training process like? What kinds of things we talk about, if you guys have been to our chapter meetings, and let them know our chapter meetings are open to the public. You don't have to be a member to come to the chapter meetings, but it is helpful for, you know, for you to access the resources that we have to be a member to, you know, learn about that stuff. So
The question I had in the chat was, who can we coordinate with to check out what materials are available at WG Jones? And that would be me. So that was from Rebecca. So Rebecca, or whoever else is in this class, you can let me know, and we can coordinate a Saturday or Sunday to go up and pull materials from the filing cabinet, so you can see what we have available, and you can decide if that's enough for you. If it's too wordy and you want to rewrite stuff, however you want to do it. You know?
And there are so many giveaways too that we have in those filing cabinets. If you haven't seen those, if you have seen those, it's there, especially the bird one. I mean, you just find all the things that you get. If you notice though, if you're getting ready to get, sorry, I said I'd come back to you. I'm gonna come back to you in a second. If you realize though that there are very few of a copy of some sort of information sheet or pamphlet, let us know so that we can make more copies. Okay, Shelley, it's gonna come back to you.
I don't know, it's gone.
I'm so sorry. I did that too.
Not only,
And then-
somebody's not like going through and auditing how much is left of one brochure or something. We need to tell somebody that I took the last 10 or something, or all of the last 5 or something.
Yeah, right.
So if we're doing a brochure,
Mhm.
how do we just send it to you, or do we print it out? I mean, how do we make copies?
So you can send it to me and I can run some copies, okay?
That's a good question. Do we make something on our own? Is there a person we have to send stuff to for like proofing or like, saying, yeah, it's good to go? No, you need to change this to that.
Okay, so that's a very good question. Go ahead and present it for graduation. Send me whatever you have. And then after graduation, I can go through and make sure that everything kind of matches what we do. And what I want to do is pull in some other people to have their eyes look at it too. Because, you know, I don't want to be the be all and the end all for it. I want to make sure that people who are very good at their English language have a chance to look at it too.
Speaking of language, do you have Spanish language materials?
We do not.
I don't think we do at all.
So I could translate our materials.
Please.
That'd be great.
I would love, just the Spanish, Jenny.
No, I'm just kidding, yeah, I do.
Okay. Because we have actually had year before last, Bayou Lane Conservancy was doing the story talks. And you would go up to these posts along the Spring Creek Woodland Nature Trail, and you would be able to get the QR code, and it would tell you a story about where you were standing. And they took one of the students from our class they asked me, do you have anybody? And she went and translated all of their stuff for them. And so talk about some volunteer hours, right? So because they wanted, being right there in Harris County, they wanted to be able to have it in Spanish as well as in English.
And that
So,
kind of outreach, and you can put in the different.
yeah.
Audiences.
Thank you for looking at that.
Yes,
Yes,
thanks for being.
I think that's an awesome idea. So can you tell us, because the last time I talked about interpretation to the class, they thought I meant interpreting to a different language or interpreting into sign language.
I have the PowerPoint if you want to.
Please.
All right. So we'll take probably the next 30 minutes or so for this interpretation. I always say 30 minutes and then you'll have questions. So I'll talk for about 30 minutes and then we'll see what you guys have to say. So interpretation, like Carolyn said, a lot of times we think of interpretation, the first thing that comes to mind is interpreting other languages. But as a interpretive guide, you are interpreting the natural world for others. So it is a language all on its own, and you guys are familiar with some of the language, and sometimes it comes naturally to us, but we don't realize that other people are unfamiliar with this kind of language. Like when I say scat, I kind of just assumed that you guys knew what it was, but some people are like, are we talking about jazz or no? Yeah. Poop, right? So there's some language in there that you're interpreting. And in some ways, we're using the same language that you would use in everyday life, but you're just creating connections for people with the natural resources, the wildlife, and whatever it is that you're interested in, the geology or the plants or whatever it is. I have a little system of guiding basics. Our guiding principles should be erotic. Let me explain. It should be enjoyable, relevant, organized, thematic, involving, and creative. And I know that's a lot. We're going to go through each of these individually and what each of these things means. I see you guys taking pictures, so I'll wait in just a second. Interpretation is the certified interpretive guide course sometimes makes it sound more complicated than it is. We're going to break it down into creating these kinds of interpretive events that you will use just on outreach, or if you guys decide to, as volunteer hours, teach somebody else something you learned about. If that makes sense. So enjoyable. You want it to be enjoyable, right? That's like the first kind of feeling that you're left with when you see an enjoyable presentation. Is you're like, I really enjoyed that. So think about some things or some people or times, like who connected you with being a master naturalist, or who connected you with the outdoors? What sparked this curiosity for you guys? What do you guys think? Who was it for you?
Well, I never really got to meet her in person. I always heard from my husband. My husband's an electrician, so whenever he goes to customers' home, he gravitates to gardening because I love it and we both do it. And he noticed that she had a lot of native rhizomas. And he was telling me my wife loves that plant. She said, I'm actually intensive in a band. You tell me, and that's how I learned.
Very good. Anybody else want to share? Who connected you?
Well, I took a master gardener program in Hayes County, and we shared it over with the master naturalist. I spent more time focusing on the master naturalist part than I did the master gardener, but I never did my volunteer hours. And then I was at an event in the woodlands, and Carolyn was there. September, I think. And we were there, and he brought me over to another master naturalist who had a butterfly. And I thought, he told me about the classes. So I signed up and.
So those of you guys who couldn't hear on Zoom, Carolyn was, what was her name? Natalie. Carolyn was one of Natalie's connections. And I really love that. A lot of times, for a lot of people, it's somebody you know personally. But have you guys ever seen that movie with, it's got Owen Wilson and Jack Black and Steve Martin? It's the Big Year.
Yeah.
Yes, if you have not seen that, as somebody who likes birds, you should watch that. That is such a good movie. It's funny. It's like real about birds. So for a lot of people, it's somebody you're personally connected with. That's me and my dad. And we used to go camping, and those were like the first memories that I have of being outside. And even if I didn't know anything about what I was looking at or doing, like digging around in the mud looking for oysters or whatever, it was a connection that we were making, and I really appreciated that my dad was curious. And I remember one time, I'm talking about my dad like he's not alive. He's very much alive right now. But there was one time where we were on a hike, and it was just me and my dad. We just decided to go out for a day. And at some point, it seemed like we were on a trail, but it's like the trail kind of just almost disappeared. We were just kind of walking through the woods at some point. And at some point, my dad was like, "Hey, let's go up. There's a hill up there. Let's go up there and see if we can see the camp from there." And it didn't hit me until years and years later that he was lost, and I was relying to know where to go. And I trusted him completely. And I was not worried about it at all. If I'd known we were lost, I don't know if I would have been freaked out or not, or just been like, oh, fun adventure. I have no idea. But the confidence that he had to be able to navigate back to the camp that way was genius. And I really appreciated those kinds of connections that we made. And we still got, he's a mountain biker at 70, and he's, we went on a trail ride. I rode the horse, he rode the bike. So we still do that kind of stuff, and he's retired now, so his job is camping at this point. So yeah, he has an Airstream, and he travels around, and he just is a real nerd about it. But sometimes it's people you don't know who might, and like you were saying, it's not somebody you know, it may be somebody you know through somebody, or somebody who's like just a big personality, right? So we know this guy, and he's not here anymore, but he's still affecting people, and his family is carrying on his legacy and teaching people and connecting with people. And it's really, I remember watching the show he had when I was a kid in the 90s. I don't remember the content, but I do remember the feeling that I got, right? And the Kratz brothers still have a show, and they still teach kids. What I notice when I go into classrooms to teach, the kids who watch the Kratz brothers are so into this stuff that I'm teaching. They just, I don't know what they do, but they just make that feeling for kids where they're excited about it. It's enjoyable. Right. It may be, Jim Goodall, somebody who's like, her purpose is not like, she's not first and foremost trying to educate people. She's herself trying to save the gorillas. But the way she does it, the way she connects with that is really, it communicates to everybody else that there is a way to connect with these kinds of things in an enjoyable way. So, all these different kinds of connections you make, just think about these things. And when you are at a booth, you could be that person for somebody else, right? You want to make sure that you're creating an enjoyable experience. We also want to make it relevant to people. So when I'm talking about soil, for example, or something else that I get a lot of times on hikes, I love walking up to like a dead tree and having people, I tell them, this is my favorite tree in this entire area. Do you know what kind of tree it is? And they're like, oh, maybe by the bark, or maybe it was a pine tree or something. Like, no, it's a dead tree. That's my favorite tree because it's providing so much life for other things, right? Its purpose is not done. Look at the holes at the top. It's habitat to the owls and bats and squirrels and birds that live there. Things are using it. The FBI, the fungi, bacteria, and invertebrates are eating it and turning it into soil, to nutrients for other plants to eat. This is full of life, even though itself is no longer alive. This happens too with our grass, right? In our lawns, we mow our lawns. Those grass clippings, those dead things are providing life. They're providing nutrients back to the soil. They're providing food, they're providing shelter, right? So you might not have a dead tree in your yard. A lot of times those dead trees can be hazardous to our homes, but you probably have dead grass, and that stuff is important. And it's important that people recognize the importance of it. So by making it relevant to them, they realize I don't have to walk out on a nature trail in order to appreciate nature. I can make these kinds of connections at home, right? So making it relevant to people can connect them in that way. So I like this quote, people only care for what they care about, right? So it goes back to us talking about Aldo Leopold, education is the first step. And so when we're interpreting things, we have to make sure that, again, enjoyable and relevant, those things are not things that you would find in a textbook, right? When you look at a textbook, you go to a museum. I love museums. I rarely retain the information that I get at museums because there's just information. It's not always enjoyable information. It's just information. It's not necessarily relevant to me. It's just information. It's just words, right? So the way that you give the information is how you're connecting these people with the natural resources. If you are creating a program, this kind of specifically ties in with if you are creating a hike or you're wanting to get into educating other people on this stuff and you're wanting to create a talk to give to, maybe one day you guys are teaching the interpretation class and you're like, I found this was really interesting to me. I'm going to share this with you, and you want to create a program. We got to have organization of some sort. So this goes back to our elementary school writing organization of papers. We gotta have an intro, body, conclusion. Which of these things, this is totally opinion. I have my own opinions, but what do you guys think to you guys would be the most important of these three? Intro, conclusion. Anybody else? Nobody thinks the body is important. Of course, all of these things are important, right? For me, I would want to kind of hone in on the intro. It makes a big difference in first impressions are really important, right? So it makes a big difference in how those people feel. They're being set up for success or, oh, this is going to be death by PowerPoint kind of feelings, right? So I think of, for example, we have making orange juice. The introduction would be introducing somebody to the concept. This is an orange. The body would be the information about the orange, right? And again, this information can be presented in many different ways, many different styles. They can be personalized. But then the conclusion has to connect the person to what you were talking about. So that's them experiencing the orange juice for themselves, right? So it could be a lot of hands-on, it can be activities. So even think of this on a smaller scale. When people walk up to a booth and you introduce yourself, I'm a master naturalist. Have you heard of the program? Or what kind of, based on what you see on our poster, what kind of master naturalist do you think you are? Introduce yourself. It's important when you're there, make sure you have your name tag so you're recognizable, you're approachable, and then give them information about the Master Naturalist program or about the thing that they're interested in. Oh, I learned about that during our intern class, and I thought this was really interesting, and I think you will too. Or do you like birds? Do you like birding? Have you ever been birding before? You should check out this organization or this app on your phone, right? Give them information. And then the conclusion gives them those tools so they can learn more, they can become more involved, right? Here's the QR code, go to the website and you can actually register to become a master naturalist in our group, right? Give them that action item. These are things that will be maybe in kind of the back of your mind, topic and theme. You're probably never gonna say these things out loud. Like, hi, my name is Adrienne. Our topic today is mammals and outreach, and my theme is, and I've lost you, right? You're like, oh gosh, we're not necessarily writing a thesis here, but we need to have these kinds of things in mind when you're giving a presentation that's on a specific topic. You want to have these things in the back of your mind, and these things may, have lots of I have a lot of little rabbit trails from my topic and theme for sure, but have those kinds of things in mind when you're creating your program as well. And then finally, involving and creative. This is important for kids, right? We want to have kind of hands-on, involving, asking questions, things like that. But it's also important for adults. We forget that adults like these things too. So I want you guys to make sure to be thinking about how can we make this information, not just enjoyable, but involved, where the person is, feels like it's not just a one-sided, I'm standing here on this table, at this table, and I'm just gonna tell you everything, and then you're gonna walk away, and I will have never heard your voice. We want to make sure we're said back and forth. So there are lots of different ways to do this. There's a tip here on the bottom, when in doubt, be more informal. And this always sounds a little funny to me when I hear this, because I think, and this does come with knowing your audience, right? With my master naturalists, I want to give you all scientific names and stuff, because I think you think it's cool too. Maybe not, but at least you know what I'm talking about. I probably won't use scientific names when a 5-year-old walks up to a booth, right? You know your audience. But I also want to make sure that everybody has access to the same information. So this means when I use a scientific word or I use a more complex word, I also offer an opportunity for the person not to feel dumb by not knowing it. Have you ever felt like, have you ever been, I know this happens a lot to us adults, you're in a conversation or even here in a lecture style and somebody says something in a way that you're supposed to know what it means and you're like, I have no idea what it means. And I am afraid to ask what it means because I think everybody else here knows what it means. That may not be true. There are plenty of other people in the room who don't know what it means. It's okay to ask, but it would be better if the person who's talking would help connect those gaps, right? So for example, as just a basic example, if I say something like, I'm going to, this is a very important adaptation for this animal. It helps this animal survive in its habitat. I gave you the science word, and now I can use that word in the future because you know what it means, because I've also identified what it means, right? I'm not just going to assume that you know what it means. So think about those words when you're saying those words. You want to make sure that you're reaching the people on their level, right? So with that, talking about kids, something that bothers me a lot when I see lectures to kids or people talking with kids is people a lot of times talk down to kids. And yeah, kids don't know a lot of things. I mean, that's very true, depending on like their level of growth. But they're not dumb. They just don't know the same words that we know, right? And there are lots of adults that aren't very smart either. So we just can't assume that kids don't know what we're talking about. So it's good to be able to bridge that gap for them by making it, relevant to them and enjoyable and all that stuff. But also making sure our vocabulary, even if you want to talk about a complex thing, define it in simple words too, but without saying, do you know what that word means? Just say what it means. They'll know what it means once you say what it means. No need to waste time making them feel dumb, right? I really don't like when people go, how many of you guys know what this means? Doesn't that feel bad when you're like, I don't want to say that I don't. Yes, exactly. They'll know, kids are very intuitive. They will want to tell you everything that they know. They want to tell you about all the times they saw a raccoon in their life. That's fantastic, so make those connections with them. So we want to challenge them. If you're creating, if you're taking kids out on a hike, for example, this is my example because it's, it's applicable in a number of different situations. But if you're walking around with kids and you're wanting to teach them about native plants, or you're wanting to teach them about birds, we want to challenge their cognitive abilities. So problem solving, getting them to understand cause and effect. So not just saying that's a cardinal that you're hearing, but hey, do you hear the sound that it makes? Can you describe the sound that it makes? Asking them questions, getting to challenge them cognitively. Why do you think that bird is making that sound? It sounds to me like I know it is a kind of a warning call. Why do you think it's saying that? Well, why would that bird be afraid of us? Why is that bird making that call? Because we're around. Oh, we're predators. So that's very good. So we're making these kinds of connections. Social emotional skills, we're creating group activities, getting kids involved with each other, getting them to work together to accomplish a goal. Physical skills, getting them to move around. This setting, y'all are so great. And me talking at you guys for 3 hours, this would not work for kids, right? I would not make them sit here for 3 hours, for even 1 hour, right? And even high schoolers, like even older kids need to move, right? Otherwise they will not be afraid to just sleep through your talking. They're not shy about it. And communication and language abilities. So this means don't do all the talking like I'm doing. You want to ask questions, you want to get feedback from them. And this stuff it works for great for kids. This will also apply to adults, right? By getting you guys involved, that's my goal when I teach anybody, is I want you guys to be involved in this. This is not just me talking at you. I want you guys to share your experiences. A lot of times with adults, they're less likely to share their experiences because they're like, you've heard about raccoons before. You don't really care. You know, I do. So I need to show you that I do care. So I appreciate all the feedback that I've been getting during, this morning while I've been talking. A couple of other kind of things to think about. We want to have, space to move around that is safe to move around in, right? So be aware of the space that is available to you. This means like on a trail, I want to ensure they're, leaving no trace and we're staying single file. But when we have an open area, we'll want to kind of have a group up essentially. And one of the reasons for that is to make sure that you can hear me okay. Because when we're on a trail in single file, the kids in the back get left out. Providing hands-on things, engaging their senses, asking them questions. Again, using tone and language that is appropriate for their age level without talking down to them. So talk to them like an adult and they'll talk to you like an adult. It's as simple as that. And having management plans in place for problems. So when I teach groups, because when I go to a school, I require a teacher to be there because I don't know these kids' names. I don't have this kind of relationship with these kids. If you are at a booth and a parent walks up and the kid stays there and the parent walks over here, you gotta be like, you hold on, wait a second. There needs to be an adult here at all times with me because I don't know your kid. What if you walk away? Am I watching your kid now? Is this a babysitting thing? No. So I wouldn't say it like that, but I'd probably say something like, get the parent back involved, hey, before you leave, were you interested in learning more about this? And hey, I see your child is really interested in this. Have you guys been to this place before? Keep the parent involved. When I'm in a school, I'm like, the teacher's like, is it okay if I just go back to my classroom? Absolutely not. You will stay here because I don't know their names. I have no threat power over these kids. So like, what am I gonna do? Tell your teacher and they're gonna be like, I'm disappointed in you, and that's it, right? So have those kinds of connections with the adults involved. When I go on a hike, I make sure to involve the adults with the content itself as well. So one thing I do is I start off with talking about, I'm like, we're gonna see a lot of trees out here. So let's identify some trees so you know what we're looking at. We have pine trees, we see pine trees, talk about that. Talk about oak trees, great. Talk about, this one is a cedar tree, an ash juniper, or the red cedar, whatever you wanna call it. It's got berries on it, but only this one. That one over there doesn't have berries on it. This one's a female, that one's a male, very cool. And adults, and I'll look adults in the eye and be like, you're involved too. You take the berries, you put it in vodka, you make gin. Congratulations. Or we talk about the bats, right? And with kids, I wouldn't talk about tequila, but I would, when the adults are there, I talk about, hey, we're talking about pollinators, right? And tequila is one of those things. With kids, I use bananas and chocolate. Okay, good deal. It's nice to have some things in the back of your mind that are easy kind of go-tos if you are looking for something to do. So for example, out on hikes, camouflage trail is a good game. You don't have to plant things necessarily, but it can be helpful. So I have my little friend Autumn here has a bandana it's green and it kind of camouflages, and their task was to find the thing that I put out there. But you can also just say, hey, there are plants that have, the leaves look like this, and this, they're lobed, they're sawtooth, they're whatever. Let's find this plant. So having some sort of scavenger hunt or camouflage game like that in the back of your mind can be helpful. Micro hike, you give a kid a magnifying glass and you will stay in one spot for an hour. That's against your will. There are plenty of resources available that have games and things like this on hand all the time. So this would be good for our outreach. I'm just making a suggestion here for if we get these printed out, things like bingo cards. So I've done something like this before at an event where you give them like a laminated card so that they're and like a marker, and so you don't have to print out a bunch of stuff, or papers, you don't want to print it out, whatever. So, and then they take it, they do the bingo, and then when they get a bingo, they come back and they get a little prize. So that can be neat. Okay, questions? Y'all recognize Harold?
I love that.
Questions, comments? Bobby, how are you doing in the back?
Good, thank you.
Good. Any comments or questions?
No,
Good deal. Bobby's, I think you've seen this before. So, yeah. We did have a couple of chat. Did I miss anything? Oh, they were talking about Big Year. Oh yeah, you guys will like that movie. All right, good deal. So steps to follow. This goes along with our introduction. This is one of the reasons why I think the introduction is so important. It's because those first impressions. These are just a few things to keep in mind when you are introducing yourself and people are new to an area or whatever. You want to make sure that they feel comfortable. So imagine going to somebody's house for the first time. And this person, it's not an unfamiliar person, but you walk in their house and they say, hey, welcome, come on in, make yourself at home. I'll be in the kitchen. And then you're standing there like, what do I do? Where do I put my things? Are you a shoes on, shoes off household? I really gotta go to the bathroom. Is it weird to ask for a snack? Whereas, different scenario, you walk into somebody's house for the first time and they say, hey, welcome, come on in. If you want to just leave your shoes here. If you have something to hang into the coat rack, just it's over here. Bathrooms down the hall to the left, but I'll be in the kitchen here. Would you like something to drink, a snack, anything? And you're like, I feel like I can actually make myself at home, right? Because you have your basic needs met. Those basic needs are food, water, shelter, right? You know where everything is at. And then along with that is, bathroom is kind of like part of our shelter. So it's important for people to know where those things are right off the bat. It also is helpful to know how far or how long you'll be away from these things. So if you are doing a program, so I like to try to at least give an estimate to people as to how much time we'll spend on a certain thing. I said we'll spend about 30 minutes with this. But you guys know where the restroom is. If you don't know, it is outside and in the front of the building here. I saw you guys recognize that already though. If you haven't visited here though, there is also a nature room here to the left. If you have not visited it, we'll have some time later for you guys to do that. And I so encourage you guys to play around with all the stuff that's in there, okay? And knowing, again, if you're like on a hike, if you know how much time you are going to spend away from these things, you feel more comfortable going on a hike in general. So for example, the hikes that I take for Girl Scouts at Misty Meadows and Agnes Arnold, they're supposed to be 2-hour long hikes. And like we have 6 and 7-year-olds. And when you think about just saying to them, we're going to be walking for 2 hours and there will not be a bathroom available. That doesn't mean anything to them other than that sounds like forever. So I may not say we're gonna be out for 2 hours specifically to the kids and scare them, but I will say it to the adults because they know what that means. We are gonna be out for 2 hours. It's not a long hike, it's about a mile and a half, but we just take a lot of time getting there. So the restroom is right over here. If you need to take a bathroom break, I will not leave without you. You know, want to make sure that they know where it is and how long we'll be away from it. Same thing with water, food, shelter. It hasn't been raining lately, so that's good. You know, I don't expect it to rain today, so we're going to be fine with the weather. If anything does happen, there are a few stops that I know how to get off the trail and get just to cover very quickly. They feel comfortable. They're like, okay, great. As well as belonging. So belonging and kind of safety goes along with kind of our other basic needs. The belonging, as well as esteem and self-actualization, that stuff will go along with your personal interaction with them and getting to know them. I do my best to use people's names. I don't always remember people's names, but we'll talk more about that in a second. But doing your best to be personal helps people to feel connected to you, the person who is sharing this information with them. So a second on learning people's names. If you're in a situation where it is beneficial to learn people's names, here are a few kind of tips. First of all, this is something that I ignore my own advice sometimes. When you are using somebody's name or somebody introduces themselves to you, you gotta be conscious of the way that they're saying their name and that they are saying their name. What I mean is sometimes people introduce themselves and they're like, hi, I'm Carolyn. And the whole time she's introducing herself to me, I'm thinking, I'm like practicing in my brain how to say my own name, which is so silly because I know how to say my name. You know what I'm talking about? And then you get there and you say your name and then you're like, I have no idea what your name is. Please repeat it for me. And they think that you're just like rude or dumb or both. So consciously use their name when they introduce themselves. This means, hi, I'm Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. It's good to meet you. I'm Adrienne. That sticks with me. If you want to use that as well as association, sometimes so associating it with their name with something, somebody else maybe you know, or using alliteration or things like that, that might be helpful for you guys. I will say, so my dog's name is Layla, and I know that it's a people name. All my animals have been people names, and when I have met like kids named Layla, and my first reaction, I love my dog, she's my best friend, and my first reaction is, oh, my dog is named Layla, and they're like, oh, I don't have a dog name. Like, I assure you it's not a dog name. My dog has a people name, but it's so weird to describe that. Like, I have a Layla in my junior master naturalist class right now, and I have such a hard time not calling her little Layla because that's what I call my dog. But she's so sweet. Anyway, so I don't say that's my dog's name anymore. I say, oh, my best friend is named Layla, because that helps me saying it out loud, because I will remember that name. And they're like, oh, that's so neat. You have a best friend named Layla. And they don't know. Use lists available to you guys. So if you are giving a presentation and it's helpful to know people's names, and you want to call on people, first of all, name tags are fantastic. But if you don't have those name tags, having lists of people's names, if you do want to like give hikes or something and you have a list of people who should be there and you want to check them off, what I often do is as people are coming, I'll say, and everybody's all together, I'm like, hey, my name is Adrienne. I want you guys to kind of go around and tell me your name. And if you don't mind, I have this list here and I'm just going to kind of check your name off, and I might write a little note about you so that I can help myself remember your name. If you don't say that and they're introducing themselves and you're just writing notes, it seems a little weird. So make sure you like tell people that you're writing notes about them and not just like, that seems very, just what I learned from experience. And don't make excuses. So I have a name, Adrienne. I don't know if this is for you too, but people don't remember my name a lot, or people mispronounce my name, or Adriana, Adrienne. I've never met anybody named Adrienne. Anyway, if you don't remember my name, I'm not offended if you just ask, but don't make it weird and be like, I'm really bad with names. It doesn't matter to me. Just hey, I'm sorry, will you say your name again? It's Adrienne. Done. No weirdness about it. Easy peasy. So don't make it weird. Attention getting techniques. If you need to get people's attention with adults, for the most part, y'all are great. Sometimes there's a big group, there's people walking by and you want to get their attention. I probably wouldn't use the clapping thing. But if you want to get their attention, you might use, okay, so first of all, these little bits of advice are for a captive audience, if that makes sense. So I'll talk about kind of outreach here in just a second. But for a captive audience, you have to make sure that you don't start talking until you have the attention of the full group. This sets the tone, right? If somebody's in the back talking and I just ignore them and act like they're not talking, that's me saying, hey, what I have to say isn't really that important. It's okay if you talk over me, right? That doesn't feel great. Engage disruptive guests. So I might, Carolyn's over here talking to her friend. You guys have probably done this with, you've seen this in classrooms, right? I just come over here and everybody's attention is now over here along with me. And now they feel a little funny about it. They're like, oh, everybody's staring, right? Or this is where names come in handy. If y'all are talking, go ahead. And I'm about to talk about something else. I'm moving on. Hey, Carolyn, I'm about to talk about bugs. I know you love bugs. You're gonna love this. Check this out, right? So getting that personal information from them can be helpful in that way. Or hey, I think you're the kind of person, you seem like the kind of person who likes trees.
Oh, it's not just bugs.
Well, of course,
Okay.
but bugs rely on trees. So we gotta learn about the trees too, right? So make those kinds of connections. Leverage your physical environment. If you are short, you just are aware of it, probably constantly, right? If you are in an area where you are below people, there's a chance that people in the back can't hear as well. And so they might not know that you're talking. So try to get high, try to get above everybody else. Or this also is, this goes on to kind of our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When I'm on a hike with a group, I also have to be aware of, it's really hot and I'm in the shade and y'all aren't, that would be very miserable. So I want to be aware of those kinds of factors as well. Or the sun is behind me, so y'all have to look into the sun. That's uncomfortable. Now y'all are not paying attention to what I'm saying. You're just paying attention to, can we please move somewhere else? Yeah. All right. And then finally, treat attention with the respect it deserves. This means be ready to speak when you ask for their attention. I don't know how many of you guys have ever met a toddler, but they'll run up to you and go, hey, 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 hey. And then you're like busy with something, you're doing something very important. And then when you finally get to turn around, it's like, what is it? And they're like, never mind. Oh, it's so frustrating. Because then the next time they have to do it even more because you're less likely to turn around and give them attention because the last time it wasn't worth your time, right? So this happens with adults too. Hey, can I get everybody's attention up here? Great, we're gonna get started. And then, oh, you know what? I don't know how this computer works. Do you know where my PowerPoint is tonight? And everyone's like, I was having a really great conversation with my neighbor over here, and now we lost the flow. I need to, this is annoying, right? So same thing, be ready to talk. Some of it's understandable, like getting technology to work for us all the time. It's understandable. People aren't necessarily mad about it, to be clear, but it can be a little frustrating. So just be ready to talk when you ask for their attention. So this means having maybe a script available. This may be something that you guys work on with your group for the project, for the outreach stuff. Being prepared to ask questions and what kind of information you might need to give immediately. So when you are working with your group and you're talking about kind of a basic script, what kinds of information do people need to know? What is, yes, Bobby.
Someone said they couldn't hear, so maybe we can ask the owl. They texted me.
Oh,
All right.
is it a problem for multiple people? Am I not close enough?
No, I was just gonna ask if you just talk to the owl and ask them. Over here.
Can you hear me, owl? Am I asking the owl or am I asking a person? Can you,
You're asking.
everybody, okay, everybody on Zoom, can y'all hear me okay? We can hear you, yes. So it sounds like one person is having a problem. Okay,
Thanks.
okay, good deal. I know who I was asking. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for diverting. Okay, so when you are, yes, when you're creating a basic script, think about if you were to walk up to a table and you're interested in just the poster of things, like what are some questions that people might have and how can you be prepared to answer those? That's going to be pretty basic. This stuff is for if you're creating a presentation and you're actually having a captive audience, a big group of people, not just people walking by and you're trying to grab people. But like Carolyn said, she's been at events where people have been walking by and have just kind of stopped and been interested in the poster. You know, you're probably not gonna just like grab somebody and say, hey, like come here. You're gonna come here and you're gonna learn today. One thing I will suggest is sometimes standing at the side of the table or even in front of the table, because having this table as a barrier creates a physical barrier that represents a non-physical barrier. You know, having me on one side and you on the other side says that we are separate and we are different. But being on the side or being open in the front, there's a lot of body language communication that's going on there. So be thinking about those kinds of things too. Okay. Knowledge of your audience, so knowing who you're talking to is really important. I'll give you time to read that little comment there. This lady looked around a little bit. She might notice that her whole audience is maybe not pleased with the experience that is there in the Coliseum. So knowing who your audience is can help you meet each person's needs. So this means, you know, for kids, speaking about different things, you're not going to tell them about the Junior Master Naturalist, or you're not going to tell them about the Master Naturalist program because they're like, I'm 7, I don't need to know about the training program. But talking with them about these kinds of information can also get the adult interested. So I find this a lot. If you have a family group come up and the kids are not addressed, and they get antsy and they want to go somewhere else, the parents get antsy and they're like, okay, yeah, this is really great. I'm being pulled somewhere else. So thank you, I'll talk to you later. So having the kids be engaged as well, knowing that audience, that family group can help keep everybody there and engaged with you the whole time. Recognize when to let people interact with things on their own. I'm not the kind of person who will be like, hey, come check this out. Because I don't like that. When I'm walking by a booth, let me read the stuff on my own. But ask questions, you know, that's probably okay. When people show initial interest, it's okay to ask questions. I would not be as aggressive as people walking up to the table and me saying, hey, you need to know about this. That feels very abrupt to me as somebody who's just not interested in that kind of interaction. But that's just me. Some people respond to that. But getting kind of a feel for your audience can help facilitate those conversations, if that makes sense. A lot of that comes with asking questions. Effectively meeting the needs of visitors with disabilities is not only a legal mandate, it's also more responsibility. This will be more important for events that you're in control of. So like going on a hike, I want to make sure that people are aware of the limitations. For example, I had one time this guy brought a stroller on a hike with us, and it was not an off-road stroller. I don't know if those exist, but it was definitely not made for hiking. And I made it very clear, this is maybe not the best idea. And he was like, I'm gonna go for it. We were fine. This was also a person who did not know that woodpeckers were a real thing. They thought they were just cartoons. So there was a little miscommunication there in general. I don't think it had to do with a disability, but being able to meet people's needs is really important. And this is not just physical, being able to get from one place to another types of disabilities. This is also making sure people can hear you, right? We'll talk about that again later. So we'll come back to that here in a minute. We've talked a little bit about kind of things you might do, especially for programs for kids, techniques you might use to get people involved and interested, making sure what you're saying is enjoyable, involving, creative kind of information, is using stories to connect people, analogies, activities, and demonstrations. And then one of my favorite things, the things that's easiest to do, is asking questions. Instead of just telling somebody, this is a deer, I might ask, how do you know that it's a male deer? You know, and get those kind of discussions started with questions. Excuse me. Again, you are not a museum. You are not a placard in a museum. You can interact with these people. So asking questions can be very important. I'm gonna skip over that real quick. Handling complications. I love this little picture because this shows that there's no such thing as bad weather, just being unprepared for it, right? So speaking skills, this is what I was talking about with being aware of disabilities. You'd never know, right? And I'm not going to just ask. It's rude. It can also have some legal issues with asking people, what is your disability? So instead, I want to make sure that I'm at minimum meeting the basics of being able to have everybody involved. It may involve me saying, if I'm in a group like this, if anybody has any issues hearing me, please let me know. I want to make sure that at all times, as we're walking around, you're at the front of the group and I'm making eye contact with you. So the volume of the way that you speak is very important, especially when I'm here with like my Zoom friends. I've been on Zoom meetings before and somebody's talking away from the speaker and it's very annoying that I can't hear them perfectly. And, there's just some technology issues with that. I just have to turn up the volume on my computer, but to an extent, it's important that the person talking is aware of it, which is why a lot of times when you guys are asking questions or making conversation here, we've been trying to do our best to repeat that in a louder way so that the people on Zoom are involved, right? Hopefully Zoom people, we've been doing okay with that. The rate at which you speak is also going to help people who not necessarily are hard of hearing, although it may, but also people whose first language isn't English. So you're wanting to make sure that I know that I speak fast. And I tell people ahead of time when I'm on hikes, like, if I'm speaking too fast, you need to like punch me and let me know because I get really excited and I just start talking really fast. So let me know, but I try to be aware of it. Also, the pitch at which you speak can affect how well people can hear you. So my boyfriend has a very low voice and it drives me crazy when he's on the phone. And he has this problem, Steven, all the time he's on the phone and people can't hear him and he doesn't realize it's his problem. He's just like, people have such a hard time hearing me on the phone. It's like, no, you have a hard time speaking on the phone because he has such a low pitch. So being kind of mid-range can be helpful. If you don't have to like yell or anything, but I know my mom and I have phone voices where I try to speak more clearly on the phone and at a different pitch so that I know that it's easier to hear, if that makes sense. I also have a presenting mode, which is what I'm in right now. I assure you, this is not my personality 100% of the time. People ask me that all the time. They're like, you're just like really bubbly and excited. And like, this is just because I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys. When I go home, I probably won't talk for the rest of the day until I have to see another person. So articulation kind of goes along the same things we talked about. Pronunciation. If you know that you don't have a standard American newscaster or English in general newscaster type accent, being aware of that can be very important. So when I was a kid, I was told by somebody that I had to wash something and I stood there for a good 10 minutes not knowing what to do because they walked away and I was by myself and I just stood there. I didn't know what to do because I didn't know what that meant. And then somebody else came over and they're like, oh, you have to wash it. And I was like, oh, I didn't know what worse meant. So being aware of your accent can help to, make sure that everybody is understanding you clearly. Making eye contact. This is something that I struggle with a lot of times. It makes me nervous sometimes looking at people in the eye, but I don't know if y'all have noticed, I look at your forehead or your nose. You probably, maybe you don't notice, you're nodding your head in the back like, yes. Really sorry.
I do the same thing sometimes.
Oh, okay. You're like, yeah, you have been doing that. It's important for people who use more lip reading, because if they can't see your mouth and you're talking this way, I might be clearly heard by some people, but other people are like, I don't know what she's saying just because I can't see her face, right? Some of the facial expressions, the way I move my mouth, those can be very important clues for helping people who have a hard time hearing. Yes, yeah, you communicate a lot with facial expressions and body language for sure. So when I'm like hiking on a trail, I try to turn around and talk or stop and have everybody talk. When I was at A&M, one of my weird little pastimes was I liked to go on the tours that like kids who were interested in coming to A&M went on, and just do that like in between classes. And it was really interesting because the people who lead those tours, in order to apply for the job, part of their interview was somebody had to record them walking backwards throughout the campus and talking. And so that's how important it is. People have to be able to see you. Right? And then finally, we talked about this, repeating questions so that everyone can hear. So if I'm talking and, people up front, you're not going to yell at me a question so that everyone can hear it. You're just going to ask another question. But you guys in the back are like, well, what'd she say? It's better, if you ask a question, I can repeat it. So the question that was asked was, how long does it take for a woodchuck to chuck wood, or whatever? So then you guys all are aware and you're in the conversation. So if I'm like, you know what, I don't know the answer to that question. That's a good question. Does anybody know the answer to that question? You guys are involved in this, right? It's not just a conversation between one or two people. Right, good deal. People who are unhappy with or who are unsatisfied with the experience that you get. We use the laugh method. This is basic communication skills. If you're in a relationship, this might be good to write down as well. Listening without interruption, right? Acknowledging what they're saying, repeating back to them what they're saying. It helps to show that you understand what they're saying and show that you get it, and be involved, ask questions, and give solutions to the problem that they have. And this might be good for, little problems, but it's also good for bigger problems, of course. But, even in little problems like, hey, I'm having a hard time hearing you, I can use this method. Okay, so I'm sorry, I was told I have a lower speaking voice than what's necessary. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm gonna work on speaking a little bit louder. I hear what you're saying, or even just, hey, I hear what you guys are complaining. It's a little hot. We're gonna start picking up the pace here so we can get back to the place where we have AC and water. That would be great. So I understand that it is hot. I am so hot right now, but don't worry, we are almost there. Right? Being able to give solutions and following up to make sure people are completely satisfied with that solution. So, hey guys, we're almost done here. Nobody's dead yet, so we're good. All right. And then resources, if you're interested in learning more techniques on interpretive communication, guiding, beabetterguide.com is a really great resource. They also have YouTube videos that are really neat. And then if you are interested in becoming a certified interpretive guide, I will tell you guys, sorry, I'm gonna get on here right here. I will tell you guys this information helps me regularly, even if it's just remembering Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So like when I get to a place and I know that, or like people come to my house and I'm like, I know how to make sure people feel comfortable, in an area. Very simple day-to-day interactions. The certified interpretive guide course is on the expensive side. They do now, I believe, continue to offer some virtual opportunities. Otherwise, you kind of have to travel to wherever the educator is, the person who's leading those. Gosh, I said we talked for 30 minutes and I've been talking forever. I'm so sorry. So we're talking for like 20 minutes past what I said. But they do have, it's a three or 4 days class. You'll be there all day and they quiz you and things. So, and then you get a pin, which is, I know what we're all here for. All right, good deal. Do you want to play a game or do you want to go on a hike? Yeah, me too. Okay, good. So I have a game that's rate a hike and we can take a virtual hike. I'm gonna do this real quick. I'm gonna show this to we'll just do 2 of these real quick for my Zoom friends since they're not here. So basically, you're identifying the person who's leading the hike and I want you to read what it says and I'll read it out loud for you guys. I'm assuming our hike leader is the person in the middle with the camera, standing on top. And she says, when we stand here on the trail, we're imitating some of the earliest colonial settlers of the American West. Stephen F. Austin stood on this exact spot and overlooked the same landscape, but it looks very different than it does now. Would you believe me if I told you there are more trees here now than there were in the late 1800s? Why do you think the landscape has changed so drastically? Don't worry about answering the questions. What I want you to do is rate from 1 to 10, 10 being the best experience, how you feel about this hike leader. Just give me a number on your hand. 5. Kind of in the middle. 8. Okay, so what are some good things that you see happening here? She asked questions, so she's involving the audience, giving interesting facts that may be relevant to the group depending on their interests.
Probably enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic, well, maybe just how I read it, but yeah, sure. What about some things that you might change about this experience? Too long, too much. Okay, you're talking too much. Please stop talking. What else? What did you say, Steve?
You break it up into segments.
Break it up. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So one thing with these is that you don't get interaction with the other people, but sure, in that case, yeah, I would probably involve people in between there. Anything else? People are facing the sun. Yeah. So I might turn them around. I know it's probably for the picture, but.
It's like the 2 questions right in a row because then people don't know what to answer.
Good. Things to think about. Okay, we'll do one more. The guy on the right is our hike leader. He says, you probably know what this kind of tree is. If you don't, then I bet you're not from around here. This is an ash juniper, also known as Easter red cedar. It has needle-like leaves. The female junipers have little blue berries. If you put these berries in vodka, you make gin. How do you feel about this guy? First impressions made a big difference, right? You guys are like, absolutely not. I've given this talk before and used this example, and I've had one person be like, I like this guy. Everybody else, and you're all like, all right, I don't know what's going on in your life, but you like being abused apparently. Everybody else is like, I'm offended, right? This guy is rude off the bat. He assumes that you know something, and when you don't, you're like not a part of the group. You're an outsider, right? That's not what we're trying to do here. But he does give him interesting information that may be relevant to these people. Yeah, so it can be kind of a mixed bag. So with that, we are gonna go on a hike. We're gonna, what time are we supposed to be done here? Is it 12:30? Or is it noon?
It's noon.
Oh, it is noon, okay. Well, it's noon right now, so if you wanna leave and just.
I hate to
leave.
leave, but I have
That
to
is
go install
fine.
some bees.
Yes, that is a very important thing that you have to do. Please do that. But if you want to go on a hike with me, I'll take you on a hike.
Is it okay if we leave our?
Yeah. So I think we'll just keep the doors closed.
Adrienne, where was this picture taken? Is that?
I don't know. I Googled. Google.
That looks like bear grass, which doesn't grow very many places, but it does grow in Montana on the sides of the mountains, some years, not every year.
Are you talking about the flowering plant?
It looks like bear grass.
Look
Very
at the
cool. No, I
lady's
don't know.
expression. Halfway down the.
Excuse
She's
me.
done it good.
Yeah, I have a few other good ones here. But anyway, If you need any of my contact information, I'm gonna leave it up here. We'll go on